Call to order. Portsmouth Public School Board meeting for August 13, 2024. Patty, the roll call, please.
Sure. Elizabeth Barrett. Here. Tish Campbell.
Here.
Nancy Clayberg. Pip Clues. Brian French.
Here.
Lee Hudson.
Here.
Byron Maddow. Carrie Nolte.
Here.
Lisa Rappaport.
Here.
Rick Huebner. Nathan Delaney.
Here. All right, let's please all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right, do we have any announcements or recognitions?
I do. It's a welcome. If folks at home are looking up at the dais and realize that we've got a new player with us, Brian Cisneros has joined us as our new business administrator. Brian's been in and out of the district since July. He joined us for our retreat, but has really started a little over a week or so ago, being in the office full time. Brian comes to us from Conval down in the southwest corner of the state, where he was in a similar role, but he's a resident of Lee, right? Lee, and a school board member of Oyster River. So we're excited to have Brian on board and happy to welcome him to the district.
Thank you. Excited to be here. I'm drinking water through a fire hose, but I'm enjoying it so far.
I wanted to say too that last week I attended one of the things that the ES Extended School Year ESY program did at the high school. They did a pancake breakfast restaurant, and I was invited to go and be waited on, and it was fantastic. The kids did a fantastic job doing every aspect of a restaurant, and I do have a history of working in restaurants, and they did a fantastic job, and the pancakes were delicious.
That's great.
I can piggyback on that. I was going to say just generally that I think that a common misconception from folks is that schools are totally shut down during the summer, and in fact there's a lot happening. There's a lot of people doing things to both continue to educate students, to upgrade buildings, to get professional training. There's been a very busy summer with a lot of people who work for you doing a lot of different things. One of those is extended year services and extended school year. And I missed the pancakes. I came in right after you.
Oh, they were good.
But they told me all about the wonderful pancakes they had just served to others who were lucky. And we got to do. They were interviewing people in different job capacities, and unfortunately for me, I came like after the firemen, after the policemen. I think they had a guy who shot out of a cannon. I mean, it was all exciting stuff, and it's like, and a superintendent of schools. But it was super fun to meet with those kids, and they did a lemonade.
I went
thing.
the next day and got lemonade. That was good too.
And so just a lot of people, whether it's maintenance, it's folks in special education. There's just a lot of activity and a lot of things happening to improve the schools over the course of the summer, and I just want to thank broadly all those folks.
I just wanted to say that I was happy to see some of the collaborations that are going on right now. I'm a member, or I need to renew my membership for the Chamber of Commerce, which I know a lot of small businesses as well as larger businesses in the community are involved with. And so it looks like, I received an email that on August 20th from 8 to 9:30 a.m. With the Chamber Collaborative, there's a back to school breakfast forum, and our great superintendent, Mr. Superintendent McLaughlin's going to be there. Courtney Richings with the Career Technical Education Program, and Steve Canosi, the principal at the high school, is going to be there to talk about school capacity, high school student learning and technical programs and soft skills based on this email. So I was really excited to see that. I think that's a great setup, and I don't know if we've done anything like that before, but I hope to see more like that to include the businesses in our community in the greater discussion about the needs of our community as well as our students, and really get the community involved. Along with the nationally renowned writer coming collaboration with G. Willikers, and the library hosting the sixth graders to do what is that, the how to survive middle school collaboration. So I think seeing these types of collaborations really gets me excited for our community, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of them, and I really appreciate the school district for pulling those together.
Thanks. All right, let's move on to the minutes. Patty, do you want to say anything about the minutes memo, or?
Just that what you're going to see in the minutes are two different formats, just as the memo says. There was the previous more detailed format, and then the new sort of format where we're going with what is required by law, which should hopefully streamline some things. The recordings are now going to be put up to YouTube with the show transcript option available. So if you go down into the bottom, you hit show transcript, it'll show you all of the transcript as people are talking. And as I'm going to be taking some notes here and time stamping, folks will be able to sort of find parts of the meeting in the transcript.
All right, thanks. Lisa?
I have two questions on the minutes. One is related to what you just talked about, Patty, because I think that totally makes sense to have shorter minutes when we have a recording. But I am finding it hard to understand the policy committee discussions from the minutes as they're being presented now. So I wonder if there's a way to provide any more detail in what the deliberations were around policies in the committee as part of the minutes. And maybe that's a discussion for the committee, but I just wanted to put that out there.
I think that probably could go to the policy committee.
Okay, that's fair. And then I had a question about the minutes from our board retreat. There was one factual question that I wondered if we might be able to consider revising. At the retreat, we talked about the 1 year implementation plan that Zach does for the strategic plan, coming to the board for a work session, and then later at a subsequent meeting for a vote. And the minutes as worded now just say that there will be a discussion. And if it's possible to reflect in the minutes that we plan to do the work session and the vote, I would appreciate that if my memory of that is correct.
I'll just say two things on that. One, when we get to my report, I'll talk to you about a new proposal I've got for you that I think might hit the spirit of what you're talking about.
Okay.
Depending on what's going to happen, I mean, we still might want to change whatever we want to change in the minutes, but I was going to say that I think I've got a concept that the administrative team could do that I'm hoping the board could do on the 10th, to do a fuller workshop collectively for several hours. But I can talk about that when we get to my update.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see why we can't add those to the minutes, because that's how I remember it as well. That we're eventually going to vote on it and have some discussions. I'll take a motion to accept the minutes in a block.
Second.
Second.
Go ahead.
I guess I had a question because we were talking about, the amount of minutes. I think I'm trying to just make sure I'm on the right page here. The school board meeting on Tuesday, June 11th, 2024. There's discussion, brief summaries and whatnot, but then when we get to my block on page 5 of those minutes, it's like my verbatim, word vomit is put out there. I mean, my every is, I don't know, maybe eliminated the ums, but, I think I was, speaking on record. I feel like everybody else's is like, Pip said, but it's like Liz stated the following for the record. So I guess I was curious about that. I don't necessarily care one way or the other if that's what you guys want to put on there, but it was just a little odd to me that mine was a paragraph of, maybe transcribed of what exactly I said, where nobody else was transcribed.
Liz, where is it? I'm just trying to find it. I'm sorry.
It was June
on
11th.
June 11th.
Page
Yeah,
5.
and the packet, it's page 15. Page 5 of,
And I think what you said, though, is that the minutes are going to be more of a highlight
Yep,
with any critical decision actually having a timestamp.
Yep.
So they could go in the video and see all that discussion up to
Right.
that timestamp if they want to see that. But that way, the minutes are more, in the future, will be more of,
I guess I'm creating, like, I don't know, I guess maybe I do have an issue with the minutes. I would prefer that, my statement not take up a whole paragraph and that it say, Liz expressed concerns for the experience and hiring process that, we were once the district to go to. I mean, if it's easier just to leave it like this, fine. it's a little weird to me.
My interpretation is that you want it on the, by saying, I want to express for the record.
Yeah, I mean, express.
That's why they're putting that
I think that
level
it was
of
something that
detail.
I expressed for the record because nobody, I think some of these hiring questions we discuss hiring in non-public at times. And so I may have brought these things up in the past. And so this was for me to sort of state in a microphone on the record what it was. I don't necessarily know that it needs to reflect in the minutes verbatim what
Then
I said.
I wouldn't say, I want this on the record, because I interpreted this is what you want by, do you see what I'm saying?
Well, I think on the record versus the minutes. I mean, if we're recording, it's on the recording essentially. I get what you're saying, but it's
So-
just a little odd to me.
yeah, I mean, if you're okay with just leaving it as is, I think moving forward, it's going to look cleaner. If you're okay with that, Liz.
But
Yeah,
we'll
and I'll
act-
just not
but-
say on the record.
But I think, yeah, right. And then, but
For
I
the
do,
minutes.
I think we want to be, I think we want everyone to feel like we're even-handed in the way in which we're recording people's
Okay.
contributions. Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right. Yeah. That's okay. Thank you.
All right, let's take a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes as a block? Looks like it was unanimous. Thank you. All right. Looks like we're going to open up public comment. Doesn't look like we have anybody here. Is there anybody?
nobody with their hand raised on Zoom.
All right, let's close public comment. Superintendent report. Zach?
So I think this is my plan. I'm going to chunk up this a little bit. I'll use the email summary to give you an update on Dundero construction, where we're at with that. And then the next couple of items, the new teacher reception, the strategic plan workshop session on the 17th. Like I said, I have a new proposal, I think, which would move around some of these dates. And then I can finish with, just hitting the survey stuff.
I have a procedural question. We have quite a few. We have quite a few policies that are in this packet, and obviously Pip is not here, and Byron's not here. So instead of the superintendent breezing through whatever he might be doing, I'm wondering if we are going to move forward with those tonight, given that those folks aren't here, if we could put those off and then, spend more time on some of the things that you might have that you were planning to breeze through.
Yeah,
Go ahead, you go ahead.
I think we talked about this.
did.
Patty said she thinks she can talk through this stuff.
Okay.
If we run into a hard line on one of them or two of them, maybe we can hold them off. But hopefully we can get through a bulk of them.
And most of them are first reads. And so
and
I think the
first reads.
concern is that we're worried about, we talked about it. And it was like, well, maybe we could hold off. And the first thing was, because Patty's maybe the only person in the room that was in those meetings, did we feel like we could go ahead? Patty felt like she was ready to do that. And we're really nervous about the rest of the calendar for the year in terms of keeping up with policy.
Our handbooks.
Keeping up with everything we need to keep up with and the number of policies that are coming down the pike that we're going to have to adjust based on legislation.
Okay.
So that was the thought, was let's do the first read. If we hit things in this first reading that come up for discussion, they can always go back to policy committee for a deeper dive if needed.
Okay, thank you.
So So if you're okay, I'll go ahead and start talking Dondero. So two major, we have the two big construction projects happening at Dondero simultaneously right now. So we've got windows where we're replacing all the exterior windows at Dondero. And if you'll remember, this is a project that is being paid for through ESSER funds. And if you trace the lineage of this back, this was originally a project that was in the CIP that was going to be paid for by city capital improvement funds. And then when I first came in, there was an ongoing discussion about community campus, the city purchasing community campus, how the district had an interest in moving RJLA to that property and potentially being a tenant. And there was this discussion that was unresolved as to what the school district's contribution, if anything, was going to be to the initial purchase of the property. Ultimately, what ended up happening through that conversation was that we were going to contribute a couple $1 million as part of that work, but we needed to find some place to get those funds. And what we decided as a board at the time and as a leadership team was that we reallocated the money that was in the CIP that was going to be designated for Dondero windows, because under ESSER, improvements that can impact your air quality, including windows which create a cleaner envelope, are eligible for ESSER dollars. So we made the decision with the city that that's what we would do. We would move the Dondero window project into ESSER, and then the RJLA fund, those funds then freed up money for us to contribute to the purchase of community campus through the capital improvement plan. So we have to get this stuff done. This is a project that has to get done before September 30th of this year, and we started immediately after school ended. We, at this point, anticipate that all the new windows will be in by Friday, and at that point, Kenny believes that he feels confident that 85% of the window caulking and trim work will also be done by the end of this week. New shades that are part of the project are back ordered, so the old shades will be going back up for security purposes to get us through the first couple weeks. But we anticipate in October that the new shades will go in. As a side part of that project, we also have we were able to once we saw how much it was going to cost us to do overall, we worked with the same group to start replacing the siding just underneath the roof across the building. So you're going to see some of that is ripped out as well. And we're working on doing the demo work on that. Just to be clear on that project, we anticipate that we'll be able to, right now the materials we need to rebuild that siding are not yet on site, so we're just doing demo exclusively at the moment. And we anticipate that we'll be able to reset the part by the entrance and probably over the library before the start of school, but we will roll into school to complete that work to wrap around the entire building. Yeah.
Is that part of the ESSER funds too?
It's also
that new
part of that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're able to, the money that we were able to save through kind of the organization of the overall project, we were able to defer some of it into this.
Okay.
But we're also hustling on timelines as a result. I'll just say that, well, let me get into modules and I'll come back to teachers and classrooms and some of the stress that comes with school building projects just in general. So the modular, at this point, the modular is out back. You can see it, you can drive around. We don't have any tape up. It's up in the back parking lot off of the corner. Those of you know how Dondero is set up. It's on the corner where the first grade kind of classrooms start to turn towards the second grade classrooms. It's off of that back of the back parking lot. It's been in for a few weeks. The footings have been poured for the ramp that will be on the back side of the building. Will be the enclosed ramp that is for students to go back and forth to the school. It's fully enclosed with windows to get to the building. Now that gets us up to the landing that's in front of the exterior door. So there will be on the end of the hallway, the enclosed hallway that we're creating off of the modular. There will be two double doors that are on a key fob, and then we'll exit onto the landing, and then double doors key fob to get into the building. So there is a little bit of a gap. It's not totally enclosed, and part of that's just around the type of permanent construction we would have to do in order for permitting to allow us to do it that way. So that's happening. We anticipate the security pieces will be in, I think at the tail end of this week, if not the beginning of next. Permitting, we don't have everything in yet because we're still trying to finalize some permitting stuff. The state of New Hampshire requires us to have a third-party engineer, the contractor provide a third-party engineer to say that the building matches up with the specs on the actual document. That's just to make sure that it can carry the weight of snow that's expected it to carry, that it can carry the weight of the occupancy. So that's about to happen. As soon as that's done, fire marshal approves, and our city inspection team has been extremely helpful and on the spot throughout. Once that's done, we're able to push we have 2 teachers in the 2nd grade that are going into the modular. We're able to push those folks into the building. The things that we'll need to, we've got staff who are working really hard. I was just over there again today talking with folks, is we're going to be doing the dance of having kindergarten orientation parents coming in on the 20th or the 21st. I think both of those days. And so normally we'd be able to give those folks, as part of that work, we'd be able to give them a full tour of the building. We will not be in a position to do full tours of the building, but the kindergarten classrooms will be ready. They'll be able to be in all the kindergarten classrooms, meet with teachers, meet with the principal, do that sort of thing. The other thing that we're having to do is the teachers are needing to stretch a little bit as we go through this, because now a lot of teachers kind of slowly over the end of the summer like to come in and start kind of doing some things in their rooms. Most teachers are able to do that, because even during construction, the way Kenny Lynchy set it up is that even with the plywood on the outside, we had plastic drops that were on that edge of the classroom, so teachers had the ability to go in and come out and do what they needed to do. But now we're in the process of, we brought in an extra teacher that we reallocated from Little Harbor, and we are moving a bunch of different classrooms that involve some of the people who are going out to the modulars. So we're right now in the midst of almost like a game. The way I described it today was like a game of Tetris. We're trying to create the hole so that we can move enough people while we wait to get the green light to be able to move everything we want to move into the modular. So I really am super appreciative of how flexible staff are being, even though I know it can create anxiety for us to. These are very often projects that come together right at the end, and there'll be overtime that we'll be putting in from folks in the custodial department all the way down through, probably some superintendents carrying some boxes some nights to get us across the finish line. But that's where we're at. We still think that we'll be all set to open on time and do the things we want to do, but there'll be some pieces like that siding wraparound that will roll into the beginning of the school year. So.
I guess I do have a few questions. So I'm wondering if you could talk about the rationale. I mean, there's ultimately you made a decision to put classrooms in those spaces versus putting specials or, what I had recommended based on my experience of using modular units when I went to Dondero, that I thought that maybe that would be a better fit. Sure. Can you talk about the rationale about why you ultimately chose classrooms, and are there bathrooms for them there, and are the teachers able to get in during construction to start doing things or putting things in the rooms? What does that look like?
So during construction, folks have access to. So even now, most of the window stuff is, except for some of the trim work, is done in most spaces at this point. If you look at the front of the building, is the last place that they're done.
I guess I'm talking about the modular
Modulars
units
themselves right now.
Yeah.
They're not allowed in until we get the final fire marshal approval.
Okay. So is there any talk about maybe having classrooms be in the building and have specials set up in those spaces?
No. So I think.
I guess, can you talk about the rationale of why you put classrooms there versus specials?
Well, I think that.
Or why, who, not you, obviously, maybe
right.
there's a team
but why
decision.
What was the team's kind of thought process?
Yeah.
I think there was a couple different components to it. I think if there was going to be one teacher out there, they wanted a combination of teachers. If there was going to be one classroom, they wanted to have a cohort that were able to kind of be together. I think in terms of the, there was some concern about if you put, let's say you took OT and you put it out in the modular, or you took speech and language, or, so anything in the special ed realm, we were concerned about kind of the stigma that would be connected with sending those students out. And I know that's not what you were talking about, but that was one that we took off the list early on because we didn't feel it was, we were worried about what that signaled to those students about their value compared to other students. And so those things came off the board really early. And then discussion around, like, if we were going to do music and art in those spaces, that really came down to that those spaces are really well designed. I mean, they have things that we can't replicate in a modular. And so the thought process was, let's not put music and art in there as well. And of course, gym's not going to be in there. So that was the thought process, was that was the way that folks wanted to go. Also, it allowed, with the classes that are out there, it allows those folks to have close proximity to their grade-alike peers on that corner. So that was kind of what went into the Dondero's team decision around that.
And, speaking as a Dondero parent from the past, no longer, going on to the middle school here, but there's always been a parking issue, I feel like, at Dondero. Maybe, Brian or anybody could relate that has children there, but, people are parking within the community. I don't know if there needs to be more communication sometimes when there's parking into Ellen Park. But I assume that's what's going to happen. I guess I just wonder how many spaces those modulars are taking up as far as teacher spaces or potential spaces that need to be used, because there really is limited parking over there.
Yeah, I don't have a count. We did lose a chunk of parking. God, I'm trying to remember if it's 12 spots. Let me get you a real number. And we will. I mean, there'll be some impact when we have like evening events that has a large number of people attend. We'll be able to, staff will not be an issue. We'll be able to get staff in.
Okay.
It's not a problem. It's going to be some of those larger scale, everyone's at the building at the same time events. We'll have to get a little creative in terms of how we're how we're having people park and what that looks like. But staffing, day-to-day staffing wise, we're fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. All right. So moving on, strategic plan. So,
Oh, sorry. I guess I didn't know if you were going into other buildings. I know you sort of briefly mentioned community campus. We're on track for that?
yeah, we're on track. Stuff is I'll just say one of the things I want to mention. Community campus that makes me think about it is there's an intense amount of work that your buildings and maintenance staff does during the summer. I mean, they're hustling, and there's a lot of weekends and there's a lot of nights during the summer for that crew. So one of the things with RJLA, so not only are they moving into RJLA, but they're trying to do like a complete years and years and years and years of junk out of Sherburne School, so that we're in a position to hand over to the city the key to what is a completely cleaned out building. So we've had, it's 4 dumpsters already go out of that place already, and they got probably one more round of probably 2 more dumpsters worth of junk that's going to go out. So that's what's happening on the Sherburne side. All the furniture, all the things the teachers and staff had at Lister was all moved over in the early summer over to the community campus space. I just walked through it the other day. They still got a lot of unpacking and setuping to do, but the space is gorgeous. I think I was telling Patty the other day, I walked out and I just had a big smile on my face when I was walking out. I'm like, this is awesome.
It's beautiful.
And to have been around for the architects, all the way from like the architects holding multiple meetings with the students around what they want it to look like and what they want it to be included, and then even talking about like what finishes do people think, what does the staff want for colors and this and that, and to have them all the way involved through that process and then walk into a space where you see it coming to fruition. It's pretty awesome, and it's a real tribute to the community of Portsmouth, that the community was willing to make that type of investment in an alternative program. I mean, it just says a lot. And we were joking, Steve Kay over at Lister the other day was like, he goes, I have lights that turn on based on heat, and whether or not they can sense that there are people in the space. And he's like, I've gone from, we're not sure if we're going to have heat, to my lights can detect human heat and turn on. It's just I think soon, one of the things we should definitely do is, in one of our couple of meetings as we're in the early fall, we should definitely do it over there probably, and have you have the opportunity to walk the space, talk to some of the staff a little bit. If we have some students that could be part of that, because it just, I don't know. Yeah, I just was kind of like skipping out the door after I got a chance to see, because it probably had been a month and a half since I'd seen it. And I started to do some of the finishes and was like, wow, this is
Amazing.
Great. So anyways, on track, should be able to have everybody in there and ready to go. And I think it would be really great for us all to go down and check out that space.
I have another maintenance question, but I feel like this is a good segue into the question of heat. You know, as we start school, I think it always comes into question, you know, should we have a heat wave? There's issues with AC. Are those things being kept in mind and, you know, being prepared for like the end of the year type of thing? I just want to sort of throw it out
So
there.
we will not bring back the, I don't anticipate bringing back, we did a little experiment on the front end last year. It was like Operation Home Unit. And, which I think people appreciate the fact that we made an effort to try something, that was different. But in terms of operationally, it didn't really work. We had, degrees were down, we get like a degree down, but we'd blow all the circuits. And then we'd have to reset everything. All the Promethean boards would have to be reset. And, so the answer right now is, there's not some significant facilities change that we've done for this. If we have some hot days at the front end, there will be hot days at the front end that we will need to kind of push through. And I think there's an ongoing conversation. I mean, I think, if we're going to do some type of project like that, it would be a CIP-based project. And so, that would be a dialogue that we would have to the city about, we're seeing that there's enough heat over a period of time that we would want to reallocate some of our CIP funds to put in, some form of probably central air type of work in some of those buildings, which are hard to retrofit, but there will come a time where that might be necessary, because if we're losing 2 weeks of effective instruction on both ends of the school year, well, now we start to have a conversation of, well, how much do we invest in those 2 weeks, and what does that look like, and what are we going to do? But as of right now, there has not been any significant change in our facilities in anticipation of some hot days on either end of the school year.
Okay, I'm sorry. One last question is the maintenance folks, I think they had asked for another staff member in our budget. Obviously, you're saying they're working overtime and whatnot. I don't know. I think we didn't approve that, right? And so I guess I'm wondering, is there any sort of budget adjustments or anything that may need to, flex or we might need to do to get this done? I mean, now seems like not the great time to not give them what they want to try to get this done. So is there a way, is there something that we need to do or should do or could do to help get somebody in, whatever we need to do?
I think you're okay. I think this is cyclical in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of years where we've got something. So a year or two ago, it would have been New Franklin. And we were hustling at the last minute to do a bunch of things at New Franklin. Anytime we've got a major project, we've got a full slate of stuff for our custodial and maintenance staff, stripping floors and redoing the wax and deep cleans. And we've got a summer's worth of work every summer, independent of any major projects. Now, most of these major projects, we're not putting in the windows. We have a contractor who's being overseen by Kenny. And so, the modular work, we're not doing our own electrical. We've got electrical contractors who are doing, what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're overseeing a bunch of people, but it still puts a strain because it ripples out in different ways into the rest of our crew. I don't think you need to, there's money shuffling that we will need to do, but it won't be stuff that will necessarily exceed what our existing budget is for custodial and maintenance staff. A lot of it, like I said, is kind of cyclical, where a lot of years we have overtime and people end up working at the tail end of the summer because of just kind of our staffing patterns and where we're at. We are though, the position that we had proposed was a position just under Kenny that would kind of be more of a custodial lead that would report to Kenny, because so much of Kenny's time now is devoted to kind of the overseeing of some of these large-scale projects, whether they are turf fields or they are these major reconstructions of buildings and these types of things. It is intensive, and it takes a lot of time. So that was the position that I think has been brought up maybe over the last 5 years, 3 times.
Yeah.
Has been brought back up, this idea of kind of Kenny having a number 2. That would be the first direct kind of supervisor for all custodial positions, and that was not one that ultimately got approved through the city council process.
All right, let's move on.
All right, so strategic plan, and that ties into the teacher reception piece. So when we talked at the I don't care what you found on the web, Siri. So when we talked at our board retreat, we talked about the fact that we had met, and then I was going to be meeting. Patty and I were meeting with the administrative team for an administrative retreat, and we were spending a good chunk of our time, most of our time, around doing some rework around the strategic plan, and trying to have that work informed by some of the dialogue that we had had with you, because we had passed the strategic plan, but I think we had an interest as a team in having the board collectively feel more robustly behind the plan and trying to be responsive to some of the things that you were worried about. So we've been doing some of that work. We did some of that in the middle of July. We just we felt at the tail end of the middle of July that we needed at least another day. We spent a good chunk of the day today doing some more work. I think the high level portion of that, I think, is that people took some of the comments that night about kind of organizational bandwidth and what was realistic as one of the things we went after. There was a conversation about problem statements, and we started off initially with some problem statements that then guided some work. We adjusted those from problem statements to essential questions, but they're spiritual brothers, I think, in a lot of ways. So we've been going through and doing that work. We now think that as we approach the 10th, that we would be in a position to have not the final draft, because I think this is a key step, because I think the other thing we heard in both the retreat and in the stuff that night was a desire to have more engagement from the board with folks and around what to better understand why the things were proposed, and have some give and take around maybe some adjustments that could be made. So the conversation I had with the administrators today is if Patty and I could take the work that they've done, put it into what we feel is a ready for prime time draft that we could present on the 10th, that day is now because of the primary, is a non-school day for staff and for students. And I have a desire to do that workshopping that people have spoken about. And so I talked to them about, would you be willing to, even though this is going to be a day where there are no staff and no students, to come in during the day, not do an evening thing, but do something during the day where we went for like 3 hours and we had the administrative team present some of the work that we had done, but also have robust opportunity, not just at the end, but as we went, to have that dialogue with the board, to have some real give and take about, have folks explain their rationale and what informs kind of what was put into this draft, but to have some real scrutiny as to what that rationale was, and then to have some opportunity for the board to make some suggestions about things that they'd like to see changed, and then do that first on the 10th if the board was available to do that, as opposed to our evening meeting. And then again, have Patty and I walk away from those conversations with whatever we feel like was the conclusions of those dialogues, and then come back on the 24th with what we would hope would be, here's a proposal for what would be another final. That you felt good about, that we felt was reflective of what of the conversations that we had collectively had. And I was able to get the entire administrative team to commit to doing this, even though some people might have had things they thought they were going to be doing that day. And so if the board could do something during the day, the administrative team's preference would be like, and I know this is hard, but kind of like a 9 to 12, then we would do something at the high school. We'd set up the space, and we would do a robust workshopping with the board around this current incarnation of the plan. So that would be our hope, but that would then change that happened. Then that would have an impact on the new teacher reception, which originally was scheduled for the 10th. In the evening, one of the comments from one of the principals was like, well, do we want to bring people, even if we're going to have the night meeting, we weren't going to have this session, do you really want to bring people in on the night where they don't have to be at work to come?
Welcome.
Be like, hey, thanks for working for us. Here's a cookie.
And a water.
And a water.
Yes.
And a water. And I shouldn't say here's a cookie, because our CTE students in culinary do a great job of helping us with that.
Cookies are pretty good.
But the wise guy comment from a principal who remained nameless will be like, we're going to give them a cookie to come in on their day off. So I don't know about the board's ability to do that, or interest in that as a concept, or ability to do that as a thing. But if we could do that, I think it's a really interesting opportunity. It is unique that day is just kind of sitting there in a way that, wouldn't normally be. And then I can get the whole team there, and I think it would be good. I think it would be good to have everybody in the same room and just have some opportunity to share and exchange and question, and I think that could get us. I really feel like that could get us to a point where everybody's feeling really good. Administrative team is feeling really good about where we're at. Board's feeling really good about where we're at, and that then we could move forward in a way where we all feel like we're lockstep, and I think that could be really important. So I'll stop talking except for one other thing, which is if the one last caveat in that too would be if we felt as a result of doing the thing on the 10th would be exclusively, in my vision, it's exclusively this one thing. That's all it's going to be. And then if we felt like we needed to do an extra September meeting, we could do the 17th as a makeup for like regular business if we felt like there was enough regular business to do. And then, of course, we wouldn't be ready to turn around at some type of reworked thing for the 17th, but then on the 24th, we could come back with that rework. Anyways, I'll stop talking and see what
So
people think.
just for clarification, this is the one-year plan stuff.
This would be a combination.
It's a 5-year plan.
This is, I think we have a 5-year and a 1-year.
Yep.
Okay.
And so there's been some work to I think be able to do both of those things, more than what we had talked about at our board retreat.
Okay.
So.
And the hours were, you said 9 to...
The 9 to 12 is what the hope of the team is, coming in a little bit later than what their normal start day would be, but at the same time being I think one of the things they talked about and I talked about with them was really being crisp when we have that like really important conversation, and not having it be at the end of a long working day, kind of gassed, now trying to have that. And if we have this unique opportunity, let's take advantage of it and let's do it right. So.
Lisa?
So first of all, I just think it's incredibly generous of you and our admin team to even contemplate that when they were expecting a day off. So that's really above and beyond. I think if it works, certainly that amount of time would be really productive. And the one question I would have, if we can do it, is if it's possible to have some of the draft ahead of time so that we could potentially send questions to you ahead of time, because I feel like the less we can surprise people with questions, the more efficient that dialogue could be.
I think our goal, I totally agree with you, and I think our goal would be get it to it would be at least a week in advance. I don't want to overpromise, only because I just know all the junk that's about to hit us as we roll into the school year, right? And we want to give you something that's strong. And so, but I think I can commit to at least a week in advance, you having the document in front of you. I don't want it to be a surprise session where you don't feel like you're trying to process it at the same time that you're trying to now ask questions about it. I want it to feel like an authentic opportunity to exchange ideas, to really push on the things you feel like you need to push. So that's the goal. That's what we want to do.
Well, are you looking tonight to get like a count of us that can go? Because I'm in.
Okay.
I can arrange it that I can be there for sure.
I mean, I'd love if we had the ability to lock it, because then the dominoes after this are reworking the teacher reception thing, making sure I lock in all the administrators. We start looking at spaces, and start trying to make sure we have a process figured out and getting that out to you early too. All those types of things. So yeah, if we had the ability to lock in a quorum tonight, then that would be awesome. Or if not tonight, then tomorrow. That would be great, because there's a lot of pieces we got to start moving in order to make it happen.
I'm unsure of my avail. I would love to be able to be there, but I'm just not sure if I can make it during the 9 to 5 hours yet.
Okay. Yep.
But I think it would be great if I could.
I love that idea, working collaboratively.
Anybody else have comments of if they have problems with availability that day, or
I can make it work.
Awesome.
Lee,
I'll make it work.
Great.
Liz?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Awesome, guys. That's great.
I can, and I'm sure Nancy can.
Nancy will make it happen.
Nice.
And, to not have the meeting
sure
at
about
night would
Byron,
be a pro too.
Better, yeah.
Yeah, we want to be respectful of all of your commitments, personally and professionally, but the opportunity for all of us to do this during like normal human hours, would be great.
I also
So-
wonder if there would be a parking issue that night or anything are they using this facility to count votes or anything like that?
It was
I would
the high
assume.
school, he said.
Probably
Oh,
high
okay,
school is
sorry.
what we would do, and in high school, we won't have a
They would
problem.
never
Okay,
take it
all
us.
right.
But, I mean, in terms of just spaces that can accommodate us all well, that's probably looking at a space at the high school, most likely, but that's not finalized yet.
Okay, thank you.
That's great.
Gonna hold it in the
Lister's got a
Dundero
pretty
modulars.
nice
And
conference.
the Dundero,
In a module, is that what you said?
they're big,
let's
the
hold it in
spaces
the
are big. We
Dundero
actually
module.
probably could,
Lister?
we probably could fit it in that space, because each of those classrooms are decent size, but,
right.
but I think we'll be looking for a different space. Yeah,
Should be the smart.
great.
All right, let's move on to the next topic.
Yep, and then I don't have a lot of verbal stuff. There's a whole bunch in the NSPRA scope survey to dissect. I gave you a cover memo to kind of talk about some of my perspective about what's in there. I think there's a good news and kind of conversation. I think the good news is that in terms of particularly our external communication, the stakeholders who had things to say, we were generally above average. Now that above average is not within a margin of error, and this is the same thing with what's below average. But generally, people were reasonably positive about external communication. I think there's some, we were weaker in some of our internal communication, what some of our internal stakeholders had to say about stuff. And then I think in terms of the richness of, as I was talking to the NSPRA consultant, if you look at the number of open response, people who respond in open response versus the number of people who are less satisfied, there tends to be at least some correlation. So you're getting, and I think this consultant said, your open responses very often are a good window into people who are less satisfied. And why are they less satisfied? So so I gave you, I took what were, I can't remember, it was 85 pages worth of stuff and tried to turn it into usable stuff. And so I tried not to mess with it other than to put it into Chat GPT, allow Chat GPT to do its own kind of breakdown summarization. The only things I altered were some of the sample sizes were so large that my subscription would not allow all of it to be done in one summary. So you have some where I talked to you about, okay, here's half of the responses within this particular question, and now here's the second half. That break was made, I didn't group them before I had them summarized, so just be aware, just in terms of methodology, that's what was going on. The only adjustments I made were if, and it only happened on 2 occasions, if an identifiable single staff member, and it wasn't by name, it was by position, came up, that wasn't Patty and I. Patty and I are central office, we're gonna take our licks, and that's just the way it is. But for people who are in other roles in the district, if individual people or individual categories of people had pointed criticism that came out as part of that summary, I did remove the identifiable information. I didn't feel like that was fair for what we're trying to accomplish here. But I only did that 2 times, and everything else stayed exactly the way ChatGPT put it out. And then I gave you in my memo some steps that I'm planning to take based on the information that's present. That includes a bunch of things that are connected to my own communication within the district, whether that be electronic, that be external communication around. I think the wonderful world of videos is going away. But the external communication, some changes there, and also just in terms of face-to-face communication in the district and what that looks like for me, and things that I need to alter. And then there's some work that we're going to do. I started to have some more targeted conversation today with a couple of principals around specifically Parent Square and how do we start to pinch off the volume of what's happening in Parent Square, and how do we get it to a spot where if you're a parent who has a kid in the building, that you can basically anticipate that your school is going to send you pretty much something weekly, and that from that school you're going to get a weekly thing that is included, and you're going to know what the information is that you need there, and how do we start to cut down on all the other hey by the way, hey by the way, hey by the ways that are that have become part of our Parent Square feed, and also that we're really clear that what each of those channels is for and what they're not for. And I think I also included in there, what clear from the buffer analytics that we have, the responses we have from people on survey. I think I see us, except in athletics, basically phasing out Twitter. It's not something that our folks are using as a regular source. Athletics, and maybe there's a student run one at the high school. But on the other places, I think I see us pulling back from those platforms and trying to focus on Facebook and Instagram being a place where you go to just kind of generally have the feel for what it looks like to be in a school, and your informational stuff is coming from weekly information from Parent Square, and then information that's available to you on the website. Anyway, so those are my takeaways, but I'm sure it's a ton of data you got, and I'm happy to have whatever conversation you want to have about any of that quantitative or qualitative data that came out of that survey.
Carrie, then Liz.
This is just, we had some conversation about the engagement. There's some delays around the city resources and sort of that integration, making it challenging for like website updates and integration and those platforms. And so I'm just curious, I don't know if I think it's very related, but maybe it is separate, what the status is of that, and if there's support from the city in doing some of this.
So the support that the city would still give us would be their technical team, who are ultimately the holders of the keys to website work, are always open to training people internally to do some of the work around maintenance of our sites. But, I think, this has been a conversation through 2 budget cycles. I think, Lisa's talked about is the distribution of that responsibility across a whole bunch of people, where it's kind of like the 10th item on their job description. I think it's fair to say it's not working out to the extent we want it to work out. And in my comments, I think you'll see the last thing I talk about is the need to bring on somebody who's going to be connected to communication broadly, but really specifically around reworking what we're doing on the web. So it's taken me a little while to get there, to get to the point where I feel like we need some additional assistance. But that won't come in the form. We have had some conversation with the city. I think I've talked to you guys about this before, about city PR department. I think the municipal side of the house is willing to loan us those services, if we're like in a crisis situation and we want somebody to take a look at a press release or do something along those lines, or we have some special light lift project that we might be able to integrate with the city. But in terms of larger scale work around, whether it's the web or just broader, kind of being a broader communication officer for us, that they don't feel that person has the capacity with all the other stuff on the city side. So.
Great. Liz?
So I appreciate the summarization. And, I think when I sort of went into this, the first thing I looked at was what are we below average under what, parents are reporting. And I felt like so much of this resonated with me. And I appreciate, your next steps. I think, being a new middle school parent and, having a legal background, I'm like, tell me all the things. What are, where's the manual? What am I looking at? And all the links are old, or the pages are going back to COVID stuff. So I think we have a demographic right now that is so used to being hands-on with their children's education because of COVID and the need to do that. But I've always found it very strange, and I don't think that your next steps address this. And I think if I were to read for myself what the below average, it says level of feeling informed about my student's progress in school, level of feeling informed about how I can support my student. I think that was hugely lacking for me. The second and third trimester in elementary school. You have an open house, you have a meeting with the teacher, how's your kid doing, and then it just goes away. And so I'm wondering if that's where it's missing, especially with the younger grades. You have those apps that get, some teachers are sending pictures and you're getting updates throughout the day, then that completely goes away. And I don't know if those teachers with Parent Square have lost those fun photos that I used to get, but I'm not getting, I guess we do get, Google photo drops here and there when they go on a field trip. But I think for me, it would have been having a second meeting at the end of the school year or towards the end of the school year. How are you dealing with other children, children that have a special education or program? Like, how often are you meeting there? And then, how could you apply that to some, children that might not be qualified or identified to be able to get that communication with the family on board. So, I would like to see the district do something more on that. And I guess, my suggestion too would be having those meetings would be great times to give those surveys out as a hard copy. I know that's hard to deal with, but, it would limit that communication, those surveys and whatnot being on the portal, or on Parent Square, clogging the feed, keep that feed to the school, pertinent information. But yeah, so I think. Yeah.
So I'd say just one thing. I think broadly, in terms of groups. So I looked at, there are two things to solve in some ways. There's a bunch of things we can tweak and improve. But what's interesting is when you get in terms of some of the external communication, there's like at times you can go through that summary and it's like, I'm not getting enough information, people say, and in the same summary, I'm getting too much information. It's not binary. It's like there's nuance in there about stuff we can do. But the two big takeaways for me were, what can we do? There's some internal, there was internal workforce communication stuff that we need to work on. And I see that falls at my desk and the people immediately around me and principals, et cetera, about how we're communicating with employees. And then the other one that stuck out was definitely some folks who were, I'm not getting enough about my individual kid and the individual class and what I can do to assist with my individual kids' stuff. So I was careful in terms of my work with this was really looking at this during the summer. I want to engage teaching staff in that conversation. I don't want to just impose it on them. So I think I want to share that data as we get into the school year with staff and talk about what do we make about it? What do we make of it? And I think I might have made a line about I want to look at things that allow staff to do more communication, but not to overwhelm staff in the amount of ongoing, what the expectation is in terms of ongoing one-on-one dialogue. Well, where is that? Where's that tipping point? And I want staff to richly be part of that conversation before I say, hey, look, here are these expectations, here are these things you should be doing. So I didn't miss that in the data. But I'm not ready to say, here are Zach's 10 commandments on teacher communication, because I want to make sure that's a collaborative conversation.
I mean, I think for me, the touch point of getting a report card for a child where there's this new grading system, we're not saying A, B's, and C's, but, maybe coming from another country or another school, it might be like, oh, why are you getting all, threes or something,
Right.
And then I'm reflecting that on my child without having the communication. So for me, I think even just a touch point of when you're getting report cards, you're only asking for 3 communications for some students, because I'm not emailing the teacher asking what's going on with my kid. I know that, but I know that happens a lot. But if there may, all I'm asking is for 3 touch points, direct. Obviously there's presentations and things that they do, but I think maybe that would be, that would be my suggestion to throw out there.
And I think what's going to be, I think in a lot of these things, whether it's teachers, it's what's happening building to building, part of it is just establishing expectation. Too, like what's a fair expectation?
Yeah.
And so if you have a teacher who's experimenting with a new, some type of new communicative platform, and you're getting, every other day, you're getting a picture from the class, and here's the kids doing stuff, and today we did this, or you're getting it weekly, or you're getting it a little bit more, maybe a little bit less than that, bi-weekly, and then you go to a class where that's monthly, or they don't use that platform, and so we don't have a uniform expectation about that, and so you have different people approaching it in different ways, and so I think what's fair at some point is for us to establish as a district what should parents be able to expect, what's a reasonable part of people's jobs in terms of what the communication should look like. And I had a good conversation with somebody today about being able to just say to people, look, if there's a disciplinary issue that involves your kid that gets to the principal, you're going to get a phone call. If there's if there is this type of issue, the teacher is going to reach out to you via phone. If there's this, you might get an email. If in terms of ongoing class communication, you can anticipate at least blank. Those are not things that we have made, official expectations that all people are held to. And I'm not sure today exactly where that tipping point is, where it's like, okay, Zach, there's a point where I'm communicating so much, I'm not doing the rest of my job. So I think there's a great conversation to be had with teaching staff. I think our people working hard, and I think they're open to trying to partner with parents. I think we can come to some conclusion that I think can strike an appropriate balance. But I need to engage teachers in that conversation.
So I wanted to say something, and it might not be
Hold on 1 second, just,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
Lisa's turn.
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
it's okay.
No, it's you. Go. Go.
Okay, well,
You're next.
I think I like to hear that you're working on sort of the different modes of communication across the schools and across the different classrooms over time, because that should absolutely be something that teachers have buy-in for. But I would definitely echo, as a parent, it is baffling. And it only gets more baffling as they get into middle school and into high school, and you're multiplying at times every different
Multiple teachers.
educator,
Yep.
and it's very hard
Yeah.
to have any idea whether they even know if they have homework or not.
Right. Right.
Forget whether they did it or
Right.
what their grades were or whatever. So I
Right.
like that you're thinking about that. I would love to see us as a board, kind of circling back to what Carrie said, be able to find some way to better push the city to fix the website and calendar issues. I mean, I'm just reflecting, at the beginning of the meeting, Liz, for example, said, oh, I know for sure that the library is hosting a sixth grade orientation. It's on the library website. I can see it right here. But you know what? The middle school has an orientation that's starting right after the library one ends, and it's not on the school website. It's not on the middle school website.
Yep.
And so, we're missing opportunities to tell people basic information that they need to be engaged in the school community.
Yep.
And it's not your fault, but somewhere along the way, we need to figure out how to stop saying the city website doesn't work, I feel like, and figure out how to make it work. And I don't know how to do it, because every year it's always, we don't control it.
That is that's not a city website fault.
Well-
right? So like that, the middle school.
That's just one thing. I didn't want to
orientation
pick on the middle school, but it's just like one example. But it's,
but those like event-based stuff, I mean, those are things we just need to enter. We need to have a consistent approach to buildings, making sure that those things are up to date. So, and I don't know how much of the library staff is they're here all summer, and, you know, I don't know. But that's, I don't want to blame, it's fun. I've been in enough situations with municipal and school districts, and it's always fun to blame the other guys for your issues. And I know I'm saying, I just want to make sure clear, you're not saying that. I want to make sure that all of them watching, I'm not blaming you. But it is,
It's not about blame, but I feel like it's something we really need to solve
absolutely.
for.
Yep, yep. And it was interesting, I thought in the survey, one of the things I was curious about was the number of people who used the website for information was really low. And so to what extent is that,
How could
because it's
you?
really, well, and to what extent is that the quality of the information available on the website? And to what extent is there like to what extent are we moving into a culturally less reliance on websites for some stuff? And I don't know the answer to that, but we definitely have to improve the quality of what our website stuff looks like and what people can count on being there and available and accessible, and make it easier to navigate. So it's like, you know, because there's stuff that we just need to call out that just needs to go.
So, a couple of things. For the website, I mean, is it a possibility to have a high school student as a project work on that? I know there might be, well, I mean, there's not really confidentiality to a
It's
certain
not, most of
extent.
this is about there's some decision-making stuff about, and I had, I'm trying to think if it was 8 months ago, I had buildings go through, look at all their different tabs and identify what are you actually using and what are you not, and what are you not sure whether or not you're using. And we had made some identification. And then the part that we stalled out on a little bit was, we also know there's certain things that were required by law to have on our website. And it was, and in all honesty, we kind of stalled out a little bit on making, before we just went and gutted a bunch of things. We wanted to make sure that we hadn't, we weren't cutting things that we were like, we don't need this, but the law's like, yes, you do. And so that's just an organizational problem, and I think we can go back to what those lists were, and again, go back to identifying that stuff. But it's also like, we don't necessarily have someone right now who's clearly responsible for updating our pictures on our sites. Like the pictures, if you've been at New Franklin School, you get the same pictures for years, right?
Okay.
If you look at the middle school,
Just a refresh.
it's Tim Hodgson out on recess duty. I mean, it's been Tim Hodgson out on recess duty for years, right? So there's not necessarily built in, there's not a process, there's not a budget line that's built into, like, this is our cycle for the refreshing of those things. And this is part of why I think my slow walk towards, yes, we need a person, is coming around, because there's plenty of that work to be doing on an annual basis beyond just the initial project of a hard reset
Okay.
of what we got. You know, I was getting ready to go out and do a little, trying to figure out with the city who I have to get permission from to do it, but some drone stuff to do like a shot of our school. And both my wife and somebody else was like, what are you doing? You should not be the drone guy you're the CEO, dummy. You're not, like, this is, your time should not, there should be a different organizational approach to, this is out of date and we need to do some changes, so.
So it's more than just having someone upgrade it, it's more than upgrade it and then keeping it
And keeping
going.
it. I mean, and I think you can see in the quality, to Monty Bohannon, who's the PR person for the city, I think you can see, if you track from the time he went in through now, you can see the quality of the communications, both in terms of just the timing of when they're going out, the rhythm to when they're occurring. He's collecting all kinds of stuff from all over the city and putting it together, and that just takes time. It's one of those things where principals try to do it on the fly. My office will try to do it on the fly as like a side thing, where when you have a core person that's what they're doing, and then he's also being very thoughtful in when they go to do their budget presentations and stuff. Monty has the city font that we're going to use and the city format for PowerPoint presentations and whatever. When if we do some presentations, and I'm hoping we're going to do some more presentations this year, you will see 15 different fonts, 14 different like setups of like cutesy things that we've got in terms of like the backgrounds and the colors and the whatever. And that is something that you will see far less of on the city side, because Monty is the gatekeeper of what we look like, how we present ourselves, that type of thing. Now, I think there's ways for us to structure it so we don't necessarily need the full Monty. But the full-time Monty, we might be able to do it with a part-time Monty. But I think that's something as we come to the budget season.
I don't think the city would allow a full Monty.
I don't
I'm
think
just
so.
saying.
I don't think so.
And the other thing I wanted to say is I do understand the communication with schools. I raised my 2 kids through kindergarten through 12th grade here. And sometimes the level of information I got was way too much. But I also feel, and this may not be a popular thing for people to take, that it's also on the parents too, to reach out if they feel that they're not getting the information that they want from the teachers. I know several teachers in Portsmouth, and all of them that I know are more than happy to reciprocate an email, a phone call, or to, a brief meeting, even just popping in after school or something. Because you got to think these teachers have 20 plus kids in the classroom, and to always reach out to the individual parents and to do their lesson planning and all of this, it's a lot of weight on them.
And that's 20 kids in an elementary classroom. So depending
Exactly.
on
And
high
then
school
you go
board,
into the
you
middle
might
school
have-
and high school,
You
and
could have
it's-
115 kids.
Yeah.
And so and so depending on what's going on, what's a reasonable expectation for?
Well, and as the kids get older too, the kids themselves are learning the responsibility. That's part of the transition of, this is my homework and there's consequences if they don't do it. But I'm not going to get into parenting, but that's just my thought process is there should be a clear expectation at the beginning of the year from the school or the teacher saying, this is when we meet, this is how to reach me if you have questions.
I was just going to say, just in terms of out of the teacher and back to the organization for a minute, I will say that I think the approach coming in, knowing that people are concerned about communication as a whole, I think the approach initially has been that we're going to carpet bomb, and that's like, so it's like, you're going to get it 5 different ways. Like we're not, hopefully, now we still get some individual stuff about, I don't know enough about my individual kid, but we're hopefully going to be in a position where the comment will not be, I don't get enough information about what's happening in the school or the district. So, and we still get a little bit of that, no matter what. There's always going to be people who want more. And that's okay. I understand that. But I think the desire is now like, okay, enough carpet bombing. How about some more surgical strikes? And how do you do that? Like, and some of that is really, some of that we can look to technology to assist us, but what people really desire very often is the human-to-human contact. And that can be hard when you've got lesson planning and grading and all those other things.
And a life outside of school.
And you're allowed to
A
have
somewhat life.
You're allowed to have a life too. But I think sometimes the things are structural, like what Liz was talking about, well, one thing we can do is we're having parent-teacher conferences 2 times a year, and instead of 1. So that then creates the opportunity for more of that face-to-face stuff between parents and teachers. So,
Liz?
I guess just briefly on what Lisa touched on. I mean, I know you mentioned getting rid of Twitter, but middle school did release something about using Twitter as a platform, and I guess I wanted to throw the question out there because when I saw that, I was like, I don't use Twitter myself anymore because of how the company restructured, and so I sometimes wonder if these need to be, like, if these are political decisions, like, hey, we're not going to use certain platforms because they might not be safe or appropriate, or people might have different views on that. But with that said, I did email, there was an email out, and then so I just wanted to flag this, the middle school email that we can go on Infinite Campus and do our annual registration. I did email back this morning, but it's not posted, even though it said it's posted for us to do.
thank you. We'll take care of that.
And so I also wondered too if maybe we could, I think I think from my point of view is, my kid's I'm not getting calls from the office for my kid, so I don't hear from the teacher. And even when I do and I'm so grateful that my kid's, so compliant or, good kid, whatever, but like at the same time, it's like, I kind of just want to know a little more about him. I'm so disconnected, unless we're on vacation together. I know, and, we're so rushed in our day-to-day lives. I just want to feel a little closer to my kid. And so I kind of wonder if I love him, and it's like, could we utilize Zoom or something, just to say, hey, these are some high points for him, these are some low points. Otherwise I'm only reaching out if, there's something we're missing or whatever. But I think it would just be nice, a little wholesome connection with my kid, for me. And that's just, my 2 cents there. Maybe using the Zoom again. I think the pendulum swung against it, and now, hey, how can we balance this too?
Carrie.
I just want to disagree with Liz, as always. No. I was just thinking about it, and I think I was trying to think about what I've enjoyed about the communication. And granted, I've only had 3 years in Portsmouth schools with my daughter, but like all the standard, like I feel like the conversation and the strategy has been around like Friday emails from the principals and this very standardized thing. Yep. And what blows me out of the water and makes me know that my daughter is well taken care of is the rando emails from her art teacher or from her classroom teacher that's like, she just did the kindest thing today or the whatever. And so I guess part of the wondering, and it's...
I didn't get any of those.
We can talk about parenting later. No, I'm just kidding. But like, I think, so I guess that's part of it is just like, if we swing to so standardized, we're trying to minimize those messages and like, so yeah, it's a hard balance. But I think too, like, I was almost thinking of champions, right? Like in nursing, we do a lot of like champion stuff where we're like, who's really good at parent communication? And like, what do they use for practices? And then there's more energy around like developing that, because it's not like, here's the best practice from X organization. It's like, this is what Zach does. Right. And the parents rated his communication the best in the district or whatever it is. Yep. And so I think we've gone from events to like more of that piece of like wanting to know which is also a sign of progress, because it was really like we get nothing aside from like a fire drill occurred at 10:30 a.m. and that was like it for a little while. So we're good and we can celebrate that, but I just don't want to lose that focus or the celebration of the personalized. Sure. And I also don't want teachers to be told like email every parent once a month.
Like,
right? Because
we don't want to do that too, right?
Yeah, like I kind
of like that. Maybe you should even, like tell me something good about my kid. Sorry.
I'll put together a standard set of messages that they can rotate for Liz, and then we can just
get a computer program that automatically goes out inserting names.
Well, that's what I do on my website.
Well, and I think just to go, I do want to just say that we do have a bunch of people who are excellent, top-notch communicators who are in our teaching ranks, and I think people do. My experience as a parent has been pretty decent. So we can always get better, and we don't want it to be radically, I think we want to have, if we're going to do that developmental release, I think we want that there's some intentionality to it and thought process about when are we doing it, how are we doing it, do we let parents know where we're doing it, are we sure that's appropriate, you know what I mean, like, so it can't just be, I think it can't look completely radically different from place to place. However, we won't totally homogenize it either. You know what I mean? And I think that's what you're talking about. So, so I think there's a rich conversation to be had with teachers again, and I want to make sure I have that with teachers. Yep.
All right, that sounds great. Yeah, I think now that you have all the data, I think like you said, having that conversation is going to help guide, I think, because you need them invested in it, whatever that process ends up looking like, so.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Let's move on to old business.
I'm done talking for a while.
We have a lot to still go through, unfortunately, with policies. Just a quick note on the superintendent evaluation. This is for the community, really. I put together this memo. Basically, the school board did conclude its annual review of Zach. We sent out a questionnaire to staff and administrators and board in May 16th, May 24th. The evaluation committee compiled those results, and then the board came together and reviewed those final questionnaire results. And then the chair and vice chair reviewed the results with the superintendent. And July 9th, the superintendent provided his self-evaluation, summary and reflection, including initial draft goals that sounds like we're getting close to finalizing some of those personal goals for him. And look forward to working with you next year.
Me too. Me too. Great.
All right, let's move on to consideration approval of policies for second reading.
Motion to approve use of Portsmouth facilities.
Have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion. Maybe you can talk about this with Patty.
So for KF, the only revisions were made to lines 131 and 132, and the phrasing that was included was, quote, "This exclusion extends to any and all state or national partisan political campaigning or electioneering events," and that's as a result of the meeting prior to the July 10th policy meeting.
Liz?
I guess I'm just wondering, I think the question leaving that meeting was the legalities around it and what should not, go in there. And so I guess I'm wondering what the process was coming to this sentence in that, was there legal consult on what we should do and who was consulted? Was it outside or was it inside? And, are we okay to be doing that?
I don't think that there was any legal consultation. I think that this was done as a way to sort of parallel what the city is doing and in response to what the conversation was at the previous meeting.
Okay, and is this the same language that's in the city now too? I know that
It's
there's
very
a question.
close. The original language before we sort of cut out those words was almost verbatim for what the city had, but now it's sort of been adapted a little bit.
Yeah, I guess there were some real questions when we left, and I don't know where everybody else stands, but, there's real questions about, what are we limiting in doing this? Are we eliminating, somebody coming to speak to a class or, a group offering somebody to come, to their group or, to speak or whatnot. And so, obviously a lot is partisan these days. And so, I think campaigning or electioneering is one thing, but if somebody is running for office and then they're coming to speak for a class or whatever, I mean, it could be construed. So I think that was where, obviously we have this events, but I think there was real questions. I know there's frustration at the meeting. Nathan really wanted this. I think, especially going into political season. However, I do throw out some concern there, and I think, we need to be careful of legalities around some of these things and the prohibitions around them.
Based on the conversation we had at policy, we figured that an example like you just gave would not be covered by this. This is specifically the campaigning of, hey, come vote for me because I'm going to make your life wonderful, or electioneering, you've got to sign this kind of pamphlet, as opposed to, I'm currently in this position and this is what I've been doing for the city or the state, those kinds of things, based on the rewording. Visits to classes, conversations would not be prohibited.
Yeah, so I guess I'm still concerned because, I think maybe this resulted from a president coming or costs or whatnot, and, should the opportunity come again for somebody to come.
But remember, this is for use of facilities.
Yeah.
So unless we're not talking about somebody coming to talk to a social studies class.
Yeah.
So this would be use of facilities exclusively for those kinds of events.
Yeah.
And so this would cover, by saying what we've sort of changed, it's saying that if you're going to come to use the facility, no school building or facility shall be used for these kinds of events, such as campaigning or electioneering.
Yeah, I get it. I guess I just, I kind of was curious around, if there was any sort of legal consult there or anything.
Not to my knowledge,
Okay.
no.
But I think the city is part of its work in creating this as an approach. I mean, has had that conversation internally with legal around this, and I think what they're trying to adhere to is the public forum doctrine, which would be if you're creating a certain expectation of a certain amount of political speech for one group, you don't discriminate against another, and so they're just trying to be really careful about we're just not doing this type of speech, and we're being universal about our application of that. I think what the city will need to be careful about is making sure that that they're thoughtful about making sure that you don't invite somebody in whose views you like more, and that you truly are universal in your approach around public forum. And I think that's what the intent is. And it sounds like it's as much the concern about drain on city resources because of Portsmouth's Portsmouth's importance in New Hampshire politics, that very often campaigns do not pay their bills, and so it's a drain for the local taxpayer to have these large scale events that we won't necessarily get back the funds for that Portsmouth invests in them. So,
Gary?
I do hear and recall this is concerned, but I think the rationale and the discussion makes me just want to move to vote on it. And then I think if our particular concern is around student groups, and just to put that out there to Nathan about if that comes up, the board would like to know so that further clarification can be done, but it doesn't seem like that will be an issue.
Lisa?
I would still vote no because I believe the language is overly broad. I appreciate the rationale, but I don't love us being in a position of trying to anticipate whether picketing and rioting are the same thing, or which types of activities we're going to limit sort of from a open discourse perspective. So that's just my opinion. I think it was in a minority opinion, so I'm comfortable moving it to a vote, but I just would still not love the language.
Anybody else? Maybe we'll have a roll call vote on this, Patty?
Sure. To approve policy KF, Elizabeth Barrett,
No.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Lee Hudson,
Yes.
Carrie Nolte,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
No.
4-2. Passed.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Let's move on to the Title IX policies, single reading. Patty, if you could talk us through
Sure.
those ones.
You thought the Olympics were over, but welcome to Policy Olympics. So, lucky for us, we have some new policies that, and just to clarify a little bit, so Title IX is the rule or law that governs, used to be just sexually based harassment, but now it also will include sex discrimination. And as a public entity that takes federal funding from the government, we are required to adhere to Title IX, also because it's a good thing to do. And the new rule went into effect after waiting for a very long time. The new rule went into effect finally on August 1st. Because we have students hitting our thresholds very soon in the month, what we needed to do, as recommended by New Hampshire School Board Association, was to bring all of these policies, and I'll walk you through them in a little bit, to the board for approval, with the possibility of one of them going back to committee, policy committee, if we need to talk a little bit about some of the procedures in there. But all of these policies that are in this section are all related to Title IX, all related to non-discrimination sexually based harassment and sex discrimination, and all are related, and all need to be approved, so that we're within the scope of what the new rule is with our practices. So the first one, which is policy AC, this is a revised policy, and you can see that in all of the sort of strikeout that's been put in there. It's revised from what we had in place for AC currently. And again, all of those revisions are to bring the language and the format of sort of terminology in line with what's in the new Title IX rule, including the complaint procedures, the grievance procedures, and all of those different components. Some of it has stayed, but as you can see, a balance of it has been changed and or updated, including components to align with the USDA non-discrimination statement, which the board had approved previously. So we would just be looking for a single reading approval for policy AC.
Can I ask a question? Could we consider a vote as a batch?
If that's something that the board wants to do, yeah, we
I
can
would
batch.
make a motion to vote on the 4 Title IX policies for first reading as a batch.
Second.
Who
For
seconded?
single reading.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Lisa, sorry, I've got to take notes too. I'm multifunctional today. Okay, so that was AC. ACR 2, technically, is a brand-new policy. And what this policy is, here we were talking about website, and we're talking about communication. This is one of those things that has to live in our website forever, so that we've provided annual notice to the fact that we have equal opportunity employment, we have an anti-discrimination plan, who to contact in case you feel that you've been discriminated against. So this is information that has to be provided in multiple locations, one of them being the website, and we have to have this by law. So that's pretty much a straightforward policy, and our policies generally are procedural. And this is the second procedural policy, and I think because there might have been one before that looked different, so this is brand new to us. We've not had this before.
I just more have a readability question. Why is this one like it I don't understand the title, like line 17 to 19, not naming an officer, and then do you know what I mean?
So line 17 through 19, because we have a non-discrimination officer, there's terminology in the law that you can choose to either have a separate Title IX person and a separate non-discrimination person for big districts. Think about like counties in Florida. Or you can have one person who does all of it, and they just go by the term of the non-discrimination officer, which is the role that I hold, even though I'm also the Title IX coordinator. So it's about parsing out what the law is. It's just the way it's written.
Would it be reasonable to request, I mean, just if someone is directed or recommended to make a complaint for
Yep.
Title IX, having Title IX coordinator and then contact information, I just think the readability for someone to utilize this policy of going through all the legalese below to see, like, it's just not, it wouldn't be clear, it wasn't clear to me that, does that make sense? Like, is there any issue with replicating our Title IX coordinators' contact information above instead of the C section below? But we still have the section below with the details of what you just described.
So would you recommend moving Title IX coordinator as a like a slash after non-discrimination officer and just striking lines 17 through 19?
Yes. Because I see now with your explanation why that below stuff is there, but I want it to be really clear who to contact for a Title IX issue.
We would need a second to that.
So let me, I can write my amendment.
That would be
Perfect.
helpful.
Try to take notes.
I
Thank
would look to amend ACR to add on line 11 and Title IX coordinator. And then eliminate lines 17 through 20.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Or the elimination lines were again 17 through 20?
Sorry. I guess I'm curious, like, you know, in just moving forward and having to update this every time, you know, obviously, Patty, you're going to be here for a long time, but, you know, I guess I just wonder, you know, if this could be a different person or whatever, you know, should we just keep it as is? You know, or if another thing I was thinking too is that, you know, the way this is written is kind of wonky. You know, you got 4 and 5, you got some bold, you got some italics, things going on. But I kind of wonder if, you know, moving forward, if there's sections like this and policies that we are mandated to put in, I wonder if you do some sort of highlighting or something to flag to you, Zach, or the policy committee, that in years to come, any section that's, you know, the color green is something, you know, whatever. I don't think green's the right color, but you get what I'm saying, that that's something that needs to be updated or reviewed every year versus, you know, here and there. So I guess I just wondered about, you know, just keeping the format going forward versus Carrie's suggestions in the case that there's somebody else that ends up being, you know, that person in the future.
We could keep a list of the policies that have specific
Specific people.
information.
Yeah.
We could do that.
Any other discussion on the amendment? All right, let's vote on the amendment, and then we'll go back to the block.
Okay?
All those in favor to the amendment? Aye. Did you vote for it? Wasn't?
Yeah,
was-
sorry. I was just
Okay.
reading my
Unanimous.
squinting
Good.
here.
Unanimous? All right, let's go back to the original motion and continue.
So now looking at ACAC, this one is the one with the most wholesale changes. So the new purple, which is at the beginning, completely replaces what used to be the policy, which starts on page or line, if I can get there. 1177. So it, because of the wholesale rewriting of the Title IX rule to not just include sex-based harassment and the very specific investigation sort of requirements, all of that from 1177 to the end has been struck and completely replaced with the new information, which now will put us in line with the new Title IX rule.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Liz.
You know, when you asked if I had raised my hand, I was sort of, I don't have my glasses on, so I was kind of squinting here looking at, I think the writing is a little different on this one. On this line 72 of the prior one, I know we've moved on, but it says, this notice shall be printed in full as required in section, you know, and I don't like how this section number is written, but, you know, I-4B of policy AC. But if we just looked at policy, we just did policy AC, and I don't see I-4B because that policy has been updated. So I just wanted to flag that. Or hold on, I guess I-4, okay, so maybe the 1, 2,
I think it's there.
3, 2, the numbers are messed up on the, so it goes 1, 2, 3 on AC, the number on line 262, it goes to 2 instead of 4. Mm-hmm. I think that's the confusion. B, non-grievance procedures, and, okay, there we go. All right. There's my clarity.
Editing.
So there
We
needs
can
to be,
fix
on
that.
262 of AC, needs to be a 4.
A 4 instead of a 2.
Yes, thank you.
I'll make a,
I think it's just a clarification.
let's do that.
Yeah, sorry, thank you.
Let's do that.
So ACAC, again, wholesale, full-blown replacement of what was there. Just giant changes to that policy. And that one was previously existing in our manual.
And then ACA.
And now ACA is brand new to us. This is a brand-new policy. This talks about the procedure for anybody who would put in a complaint, and what that procedure would look like, including what the report would be, where previously the report had to be written, now it can be written or oral, and what process you would need to go to follow that. References back to ACR and goes through the entire procedure, as well as definitions of who people might be and what the complaint process would be, what the formal grievance process would be. And a grievance is just a complaint that's put in, how that investigation would look, opportunity for appeal, who would be the appellate person, confidentiality, any kind of supportive measures we put in place, and most importantly, and I'm starting this tomorrow evening with the athletic coaches training for every employee in the district, so that they're aware of the Title IX rule and the changes.
So I think my biggest issue right now is just the formatting of this. Obviously, you had to put it together, but I think we go, when you're doing policies, it's super important to have the numbers and the letters and the all line up in organization to be able to cite something. So on this one, you have a section for definitions under section D, and then under sex-based harassment, you start getting into number 1, line 192 and 198, 1 and 2. So I don't know, it seems like that should be a pop out into, you're no longer in the definitions and you're getting into some details there. So there needs to be a pop out. So I think
Which one are you on, Liz?
I'm on ACAC.
I think we're on ACA.
ACAC, we just did ACR and then we were on ACAC.
We did ACAC and then we were on
ACA.
ACA.
Okay, I thought when we voted I was squinting at the line on ACR, so I don't recall ACAC, but I mean ACAC is pages and pages long.
Yes.
And there's some
So maybe just go back to the numbers so that we can follow you on ACAC.
So which line are you talking about, Liz?
Yeah, so on ACAC, you have definitions that start on line 94, and then all of a sudden on line 192, under sex-based harassment, we start getting into more details. We're beyond the definitions at that point, and so there's not a separate, you go 1, 2, so Section D is definitions, then we need to have a Section E getting into whatever that header
No,
is.
because the number 1 that's on line 192,
Yeah.
quid pro quo is a type of sex-based harassment. Specific offenses, and they go through what those specific offenses are, all types of sex-based harassment. So that's formatted appropriately.
Okay. All right. Was this like a model from?
This came straight from NHSBA. All of these are their policies that we're adopting.
Okay, yeah, because the formatting is really wonky to me, having, sort of dealt with legal, having to navigate some of these things. And so it is a bit wonky. And then you get to line 232, you got a lowercase e and or, but it looks like it's still going under this, so that, so it still looks like it's going under line 227 instead of a pop out. So that needs to slide over. So it's just, and it creates a lot of, we're creating a lot more pages because we're doing it in that way. So I think, it may need to be considered that there might be a separate section to define sex-based discrimination that's not under the definitions, if you know what I'm saying. So, definitions are saying, here's the word, here's the definition. If there needs to be more clarity over and over again about what, and there's laws, you're kind of going beyond, you're going a little bit beyond the definition.
I hear what you're saying, but I would
defining.
be hesitant to change anything that NHSBA, because it is this complicated.
Yeah.
And because this is one of the reasons we need training, is because it is this complicated and this involved.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nuance to everything that's in here that is hugely different from what we were dealing with the prior rule.
Yeah.
So I would really strongly advise against changing any of the formatting that NHSBA gave us, because they're the ones who are trying to keep us from getting into hot water with the feds.
Yeah, I guess I'm questioning under 232 if that's an little e that's going to go under D, then that needs to slide over. But then you have 3 that's popping out. So I think little e, that formatting is wonky to me. And I just worry with such a large policy, I think the readability needs to be clear and concise. And maybe NHSBA isn't, maybe they're not, I don't know if there's something to throw to the outside legal to sort of see if they have a model, because, it seems like this is a really large policy to dissect for staff, and it really needs to have a good navigation system in organizing how you navigate it. So that's my 2 cents there.
Okay. Carrie, then Lisa.
I think that the idea is that we need this to be compliant, and I think that the policy committee can make those make grammatical changes or things like that that are minor and don't affect it. So I would go for passing this, and then maybe prior to publishing on our site, have one more comparison to that. Does that sound reasonable, Patty? One more comparison to the NHSBA, and ensuring that our auto format has not overcorrected things we didn't anticipate. My original question, which was actually more connected to the final policy, but in general, Patty, remind me what happens if the complainant doesn't there need to be an alternate designated or an opportunity for someone to go, if Zach wants to complain about your behavior.
Yep.
And you are the grievance officer.
Yep.
What does Zach do?
So there would be somebody else designated for that?
Okay.
If it was me doing the offending?
Okay.
So yes. Yep.
Because that was the one thing I didn't see in here. In the new,
So it's probably an ACAC.
okay. Maybe I missed it on page 432.
It might have been on line, 22, 25 or something, but there is a provision for that.
And that was, I still think that we need to pass this, but that was just kind of a lingering question of,
Yep.
I specifically remember our prior policy having an alternate structure for that case, but maybe that can be.
And the prior policy was very strict about who could do what in the process, where there's a little bit more, I don't want to say leeway, but there's a little bit more flexibility with people being able to do investigating the same way that we've been doing investigations for bullying, or, something happened in the cafeteria kind of thing, where before we had to have a bench of people to do different tasks.
Lisa.
Yeah, I agree. We should pass these to be in compliance with the law. I think my question was on the last policy, Patty, and this is probably beyond policy and more into sort of just the operational procedures, but I would be curious to know how you're envisioning updating this to parents and kids, if you can share that even later if you're not prepared to right now. That's just something I would love to have some handle on. Because we've had some
Absolutely.
challenges
Yep.
as a district in the past
Yep.
of not always being as straightforward with
Yep.
Title IX as we could be.
Yep.
So I'm happy to see us being more.
I can bring that back at a later time. My big concern is to make sure,
Yeah.
before we have kids in seats, we've got policies on the site.
Well, and I think the reality is part of that training up of everybody across the district is then, okay, although this does have a lot of operational pieces to it, but what does it actually look like in our setting?
Yep.
So we're getting it out there, we're trying to create the knowledge, and then there's going to have to be we'll be in a period, and I think NHSBA knows this, where we're going to have something on the books that people are all over the place trying to interpret how to properly implement, and we will be in a muddy period, as other school districts will be all over the country. And so we'll have to do some work in terms of trying to, after we train people, really thinking about beyond this, when you get off this page, what does it look like? That's just reality. and then in turn, how do we then communicate those things to parents and kids?
Because we unfortunately have kids who need to know this better than they do.
Yep,
Definitely.
absolutely.
All right, Liz, last comment.
Yeah, I guess, I also am looking at, obviously there's a link here that goes to nothing, and I assume that there's going to be something there, but some of these strongly encouraged, I don't know that I I obviously encourage people to, report it. I think it'd be stronger if it, is in writing. I do agree with that language. So I'm a little conflicted there. But I guess with that said, I just wanted to sort of bring up a privacy issue as far as putting a link, and what are we linking to? Are we doing a Google Doc? What does that look like? I assume it'd be a form, but how are you collecting that information? It says a district's complaint form, but if they're going to the complaint form, then it would be emailed over to you. I guess I think some of that process would be concerning.
Complaint
right?
form is actually just a plain old form that you could print out and fill out by hand, or you could type right in it. It's not a
Line
Google form.
114, it's a broken
I
line.
saw that, yeah.
All right, I think we're ready to vote on the consideration and approval of Title IX policies for single reading as all these policies as a block. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous?
Great.
All right, how do we want to tackle these last ones, first readings here? One at a time? Or,
I suppose we could do one at a time.
okay.
I can kind
Might
of go.
might go quicker if we do one at a time, honestly.
That's what I'm thinking. All right, let me just clean up my computer here. I've got a lot open. Okay, first one on here, Food and Nutrition Services, ACF. This is first reading, ACF. Recommendations to the policy were to put the name and title of the person responsible in section B2, which is me. There it is again. So there's another one for our list of, we got to change this, or keep that in mind. So, and again, this is an NHSBA sample policy as part of their spring update. So we're going to be getting the fall update shortly. So this is just first reading approval.
Motion to approve?
Do I have a second?
Lisa?
Second.
Tish?
Any discussion or questions? All right, let's have a vote on the first reading of ACF. All those in favor?
Okay.
Any opposed? Nope. Unanimous? All right, next one.
Next one, prohibitions regarding use and possession of tobacco and e-products. This one is multi-coded because it goes into multiple sections. So this is ADC, GBED, JICG. This policy went back to the committee because we needed to add in a provision about nicotine in powder form. So to address that, in line 6, we added nicotine and tobacco cessation products may be used in compliance with policy JLCD. And we also put in the phrase alternative nicotine products to sort of address the evolving state of nicotine with powders, liquids, and it's like lions and tigers and bears. So we've got a lot of nicotine, so we decided to just
Yeah.
couch it under the term alternative nicotine products. So we went through and changed all of that. So anytime it said e-liquid, now it says manufactured nicotine or alternative nicotine products. And this is second reading.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Is this is under first reading though, right? And I know this was
This is,
this is under the
this should be second reading.
okay. So that, because I remember seeing this one before.
Yeah, this should be second reading,
Okay.
so this would go for second reading.
All right, so this is, just for clarification, this
Yep.
is the final.
Yep.
Any questions? discussion?
I guess I have just a quick one under this. I think it would probably come up later, but like, but with marijuana being decriminalized and not being a controlled substance, would we have another policy? Should it be further decriminalized? Or, I guess I kind of wonder at some point if it would snug into this policy. They're using the same type of devices. E-cigarette, a lot of those devices tend to be marijuana vapes, and not nicotine vapes. So, when I'm looking out in the world of people using them, in other states that have completely decriminalized, I'm smelling more marijuana on the streets than nicotine. So I guess I kind of wondered, in the future, just wanted to throw that out there, would that sort of live there? And, would there be space at some point to include it?
It
or
might
what?
need to be a whole separate policy.
Yeah.
Especially since it would be minors using it, so I would think that we would have a stand against that.
All right, let's take a vote on the second reading of ADC GBED JICG. All those in favor?
Title.
Any opposed?
Sounds like you're at the eye doctor, Brian. I can read that line. Okay, next one, parental objections to specific course material. This is policy IGE. So IGE, we need to update this to keep up with current laws. The policy that's linked in here is the model policy. Not something we run into in the district, but something we should have on the books. This is first reading.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
Just to move the line 7 to line 6, connecting there.
Who's the original? You seconded?
Brian
Brian moved?
seconded, yep.
Okay.
It's just eliminating a space, that's all.
Move line 7, oh yes.
I was going to take a motion, but somebody called it a
Seconded,
motion.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's all right.
What is the, I guess my further follow-up would be, you said you haven't really run into this, so, should you run into it, they're contacting you to inspect the materials? What is that, what would that be, like,
So they would contact the building principal, and then the building principal would work with them to look at materials and potentially discuss what's going on.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, let's vote first reading of IGE. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None? Unanimous?
Next
All right.
one, health education and exemption from instruction, IHAM. The law changed from the existing policy that we have, so we have to update the policy to keep up with the law. What you have in the link is the model policy. Again, not something we run into too often in the district. And then IHAMR, which is connected to it and also listed, includes options for the student to be exempt from specific subject matter rather than all health education. And the committee recommended approval of both IHAM and IHAMR in 2 readings. This is first reading.
I'll take a motion to have both of those approved in a block. Somebody's willing to make it?
You're looking for a motion?
Yes.
Motion.
A second? All right. Let's have discussion.
I have a question about the policy, and I guess I just wonder if this policy is, has affected sexual education. I know my son has gone through puberty. I know when I was in 5th grade at Dondero, I got a little baggie, and there was a conversation about all the things that came in the baggie and what puberty was. And I guess I'm a little bit concerned that, maybe schools have shied away a bit at younger ages from teaching some of these things because of the, need to maybe separate the girls from the boys or, kind of get into those things. And so I guess I just wonder, have you seen this play out? I don't know that I think we've gotten Haven notifications when they've had body things about the children with puppets and stuff, so I don't know if that would sort of apply to this policy. But I guess I just wonder, what does this look like for, elementary and middle school students, going forward? And are they getting a solid sex education because we have to give 2 weeks notice, I guess that's my concern, I mean, obviously you hope that parents have those conversations and that's their responsibility, but I don't know that I'm best suited to talk to my boy about, puberty, and so obviously I'll seek out people that might be, but at the same time, I leaned on the school when I was younger for that, or a book, or, and so how are we doing this, or are we not doing it because of a 2-week notice policy? Or maybe I just throw that out there in the atmosphere to think about as we move forward, because I think it's important. There's a lot of changes going on, and my son was like, "Oh, I guess I need to shave now," and I was like, "Oh, you don't have to shave." There's these things, and I think they're great conversations to have. But where does that belong in school? And does it belong in school? And should we be enforcing it more? With a 2 weeks notice.
Carrie.
The IHAM, I understand is the template policy.
Yep.
What about the actual form?
That's IHAMR.
Yeah.
And that's also what they gave us as the model.
My interest, if others think it would be good, would be putting that form back out to the policy, or doing some digging into this, because I find it very dated, and I'm not sure that the legal connections are there. I'm primarily concerned about the recognizing and avoiding sexual abuse as something that is something to opt out of. And instruction on diseases is so generic that as we have just gone through a pandemic, that is that COVID is and was sexually transmitted. So I would just, I'm good with the policy. It's just the form that I would like to maybe.
Well, this is a first reading,
read,
so we can
right.
send
Yeah.
it back to them.
I would, second, if that's a motion to amend the form, that I would second it.
I think it's a referral back to policy.
Okay.
So in between first and second reading.
Okay, I mean, I guess I would second that referral as a group sort of consensus.
Thank you.
If we need that. I think some of that is reflected a little bit too with the outdatedness of talking about AIDS in, line 5 of IHAM too. So I guess I just wonder about the practicality of this. Again, sorry just to interject, but what Carrie said about, I think a lot of the work that we're actually getting done from Haven, like who's actually doing this work and what does it look like and how does their policy apply to what we're actually doing? So, thank you.
And if can I
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'll be quick. To be honest, if there isn't a clear place that this came from, I would like the policy committee to consider just open response of what they don't want, because I think that we should be and probably are talking about HIV because it's a really interesting virus to talk about in non-transmission senses. And so I think that at least if there are objections, they can be more qualitative and open-ended, and that way there's not confusion by the parents between the parents and the district about what is or is their kid should be in or not. Sorry, that wasn't quick.
Lisa?
Yeah, I agree with Carrie on that, and I just think the language needs a little bit of an update. Like, I'd love it to reflect sort of what the CDC now says are the most important, sexually transmitted diseases, especially for our teenage, people who are going to be in these rooms. I mean, AIDS is a concern, but it's not the only concern, so I worry about that. And I also feel like if we are going to call out abstinence, then we should also be in some way referring to contraception I respect people's interest in having abstinence be part of the conversation, but I don't think it's all that responsible as a matter of policy to call that out without calling out the fact that if we do have people that are sexually active, that they should be safe when they do it.
Is that
That's
is
my
that
2
that
cents
in there on?
I don't see it. I might have missed it, but my eyes get a little bit, we're on page whatever we are of this packet, but I didn't notice it when I read it through the packet, and I may have missed it.
This,
I guess, sorry, briefly, real quick. I think a lot of controversy comes around, and I don't say this to be brash, or I think a lot of controversy comes around the discussion of gender, or what we see politically, the discussion of gender in schools, and a parent's right to opt out of, a discussion of gender in schools. So I think maybe we need to really revamp this policy based on the comments that have been shared tonight to also include discussions of gender and sexuality in the part of the sexual health education. I think health education also includes gender, and I guess I'm curious to
My notes as we were talking was we've been talking a little bit I've been talking a little bit with Nancy and Brian about the desire of some folks on the administrative team to bring back some of the presentation work. Specifically, we're talking about doing it in relation to doing a better job of informing the board right now in our conversation about Portrait of a Graduate. What are a lot of the things we're already doing? What do those look like on the ground? But I had it as a note for myself, does it make sense in terms of informing the policy conversation at some point? There's several questions that are kind of floating here that are around health education. What does health education look like within PSD? How do we deliver it? Who's delivering it? What are the standards that are connected to it? I can answer some of those questions, but in all honesty, I cannot answer all. And so I think we could come back in the future with a report that's less about the policy and more about the kind of the context in which some of these questions exist right now. We do have some students. I know I don't have data, and I can also bring that back at some point about the number of students we have that opt out. I know that we have at least 1 or 2, but I don't know I don't have that data in front of me as to how it's not large swaths of kids, but it is utilized, or it has been utilized since I've been here in the district at least once or twice.
I have one other question about the opt-out. It's a graduation requirement, so are we running into any situations where students are opting out to the extent that it's an issue with their graduation credits, or do we have a way of resolving that?
The state has created this loophole to allow people who
great.
don't want that to be a graduation
Maybe not
requirement for their
great,
kid to not be a graduation requirement for their kid.
Okay.
Yeah. Great question, though.
all right. So it sounds like there's lots of discussion that's going to be had in the policy, and a lot of notes were taken down. So let's have a vote on the first reading, and I'm sure they'll talk about it in the policy committee to approve IHAM and IHAMR for first reading. All those in favor?
No.
And one dissent.
Okay, now on to IHAMA. Boy. IHAMA is teaching about alcohol, drugs, and vaping. And again, model policy with additional language. And to mirror the policy we approved a little earlier, we're using the phrase alternative nicotine products to cover that whole group of nicotine products that are currently evolving. And this is first read.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Who seconded?
Carrie.
Carrie,
Carrie.
thank you.
Discussion? Carrie?
So one of my first things in reading this, because the healthcare, so my biggest concern in both of these, both the alcohol and drugs and sexual health, is that someone would be in need of help and support, and look to school policies to find that help and support, and then just see no, Does that make sense? Like, no, don't. And so I just double checked, and I guess,
You suggesting this is a Nancy Reagan
Just say no.
policy?
Yeah.
I will say yet again, the war on drugs has been won by drugs. So let's move on. No. I think so. My piece is really just that in the state of New Hampshire, and I just double checked the RSA and the law, but children 12 and up can consent themselves for alcohol and drug treatment and receive that support. And it was just something that maybe I understand it's a school policy, but like I'd love policy to consider that addition, and that is RSA 318B12-A. And similarly, there's the age for consent for STD is 14. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm going too far into my clinical world, but I would love for it to be like healthcare providers or services have different, disclosure. I don't know, just an idea.
Lisa?
Yeah, I agree with Carrie. I mean, I think we're in the business of educating, and part of that should involve telling our students when they're able to seek out help on their own.
Liz?
I guess on line 14, I'd like to change abuse to misuse. I think, basically going forward that the standard of practice, and maybe, I don't know, Carrie could probably speak to this too, but, in the communities that I've worked in, has been the misuse, because you don't want a stigma on drug use, because I think some people, are prescribed medication for, a surgery or something. So I think, then it becomes the misuse of it versus abuse. And I also, I know 211 has become the standard in New Hampshire for, getting treatment. I don't know if Carrie can speak to that too, but I don't know if even just simply including the 211 number in this policy would be appropriate, because I think that is, and just for Zach's purposes, I guess too, that's the gateway now. And I don't know if COVID sort of expedited that or helped that along, but it seems like 211 is really the go-to phone call line if somebody is in need of treatment immediately.
What was the first part of what you said? I'm sorry.
My first part was change abuse to misuse when you're talking about the use of substances or drugs. So it's misusing substances instead of saying drugs. It's usually, I guess with that said, yeah, it's instead of drugs, you usually say substances. So misusing substances. Because you can use alcohol, obviously as an adult, but or I think the pain med is probably the best description. You're prescribed a pain med for your leg, you get a surgery, but then you're misusing it because you're taking too much. And then the other bit was the 211.
Yeah, just another suggestion, but the other thing that we use is like non-prescribed medications, which might be important here because sometimes there's or once I heard of kids who share Adderall with each other, and so it's still prescribed medications. It's not an illegal drug. It's just non-prescribed use. Might be helpful.
Mm-hmm. All right, anything else? All right, let's have a vote on the first reading, and we'll send it back to policy to approve the first reading, the IHAMA, with the suggestions you guys made. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Next one is IHBAA, evaluation requirements for children with specific learning disabilities. In this one, this was a very old policy. The one we have on the books goes back to 2017. And with this updated policy, again, sample policy from School Boards Association, there is some terminology change in the title.
What page is this on? Because it skips
It's
over.
out of order in the packet.
It's not the next one in the packet.
Well,
I'm just doing the links.
that's what I did,
to-
yeah.
Oh, so, do you know what page number?
Let's see.
Sorry, I just want to be sure too that it's in the packet for
You just
on
do
the
a
city
control
website.
F and type in IHBA. and it's all-
I'll go up, but I just, it's not,
Using
it's
your
not
fine
here.
features.
IHBAA is where we're at.
IHBAA. So it's been bolstered a little bit to include some more information about the type of evaluations that can be used. Again, more modernized, some of the language has been changed. And in line 14, the word that is going to be chosen is either. There's a bracket in there. The word that the committee is recommending is either. If the child satisfies either model and shall evaluate for. So either model being A and B, referenced in lines 9 and 12 above. This is first reading.
All right, I'll take a motion to accept.
Motion
page.
to accept.
You.
Second.
Second. Discussion?
I would just say, you know, I would suggest maybe, you know, including it into the packet if we need to update the website or whatnot to add it in there. I mean, obviously the link is available to community members when they hit the packet, but that one is missing out of it.
All right, let's move to, or let's vote on first reading for IHBAA. All those in favor? Aye. None opposed, so unanimous. Thank you.
Next one, IHCA summer activities, model policy, and this one is more comprehensive, includes different learning styles for students, another required policy, and it's short. Recommend adopting it as written.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
Carrie?
I was gonna say it on the last one, but I have to on this one. Like, why? Why do we need this policy?
It's required, I think because it links back to part of the rules, the 306s, that there's stuff in there that
And then they
every
update
school
them.
district must do, so we have these things, like some of them, yeah, it's like, well, no kidding, so, but, yeah, that's why.
Okay.
Lisa?
So I'm now going to play the role of Liz and bring a grammar question to the table. But I think the original policy seemed to suggest we would provide students with resources. And as written now, it seems to suggest that we are expecting students to obtain resources, which is a minor point because I don't know why we need the policy. But
I think this one's more inclusive, though,
Yeah.
for,
right, like it's not just
You
a
know.
book list.
Yeah, it's not just a book list anymore.
Oh, I'd
It's-
love a book.
I agree,
I'd
though,
love
like
a book
the
list.
summer
love a
classes
book
at the
list.
high school and stuff like that, this is more inclusive than the old one
Yeah.
when it comes to that stuff.
I'd love a book list, though. I'm going to be honest with you.
Still in
I'm-
there.
You know, if
Still an
I could
option.
force my kid via book list to expand his horizon,
we'll just trade children. You can have.
you just send me a book list and I'll tell him it's mandatory.
All right, let's have a vote on IHCA first reading. All those in favor? Aye. None opposed? Thank you.
Dual-coded IHCD, LEB, advanced coursework, advanced placement courses, and STEM dual and concurrent enrollment program. That's a mouthful. Another required policy. We did spend a couple of meetings talking about this in policy because of some of the terms that are in here about advanced placement and conversations about how advanced placement might be running or not running in the high school, and those kinds of questions came up. But this really is to help explain, again, linked to the 306s and some of the other laws that we've got, help to explain how students could take advanced coursework, could be in advanced placement, and also now includes, as opposed to the previous version of the policy, information about CTE and some of those courses and how those could help students get ready with a credential.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Lisa?
I feel like I did bring some of these questions to the policy committee, but I have huge reservations with approving this policy as written, and I would vote no. I don't think that we should be passing through policy that has no resemblance to what we do inside the buildings. And I know things that have been in flux in the high school for a while around advanced placement and dual enrollment, but the reality is we don't offer it. And I think that we should be taking a harder look at what our strategy is going to be as a district. I was hopeful that that would come up during strategic planning. It didn't rise to the surface specifically, but we don't offer AP classes. We really only comprehensively offer dual enrollment through CTE and not consistently across our academic disciplines at the high school. We do not consistently support students in pursuing these things on their own, and I think there's a lot of equity issues involved in making these opportunities available more to the students who can either have the wherewithal to pursue this on their own or the financial ability to hire tutors and pay for testing and to enroll in classes outside the high school. So I would vote no for all these reasons. I think it's a bigger discussion. I think if we were just looking at the second half of the policy related to CTE, I have no issues with that. But I just don't think it makes sense for us to approve a policy on AP classes when we don't offer AP classes, and we've yet to reconcile with what our strategy is going to be for that going forward.
Carrie?
Just to clarify, the changes are highlighted, correct? So
Yes.
this is already something on the books.
Yep. Yep. So the changes is basically section B.
I guess, and I hear the practice change that you're talking about, Lisa. I'm just struggling with, because A covers advanced coursework and advanced placement, and it's already on the books, whether the practice is, the policy isn't the change, the practice is the change, right?
No, I agree with you, but I think if we're sort of holding ourselves to set policy and then have an expectation that our school leadership is following the policy, and we have just a huge mismatch between the practices in the building and the policy, then one or the other should change. So if the decision is that we want to continue with the practices that we're doing in the building, then that's a fair discussion, but then I don't think that we should be passing a policy through that requires all of these things to happen that we just don't do. You see what I mean? So, I mean, if the decision is we've given up on AP for clear reasons and we have a different way that we want to go for clear reasons, I'm not objecting to that, but I just feel like it's very weird to pass through the policy again when, since this policy went on the books, we've abandoned AP.
I guess my read of A is more focused on the advanced coursework and offerings at other schools.
We don't do that either, though, very consistently.
I mean, I don't know how it happens. I know there's other students taking schools at other high schools. You know what I'm trying to say. It's too
Take classes.
No, it does happen, but it's just not done consistently or equitably or across the entire curriculum. And I just feel like we should be having a policy that is clear and fair and matches what we're going to do.
Liz?
So I'm not sure as far as the RSA that are included here and the education, Department of Ed policy on what we need, but I think some of the obviously procedure, but or I guess I wonder if some of the fix is the titling of this. Because maybe we're not, like Carrie's reading the paragraph, it's not really talking about AP course this, AP course that, so maybe advanced placement isn't the right word. Also we're talking about STEM dual and concurrent enrollment, but are there other classes that aren't STEM that we're, outsourcing? Like, I can't think of an example right now, but, hey, is there like a advanced, history course or something that's not STEM related that would be a college learning opportunity, and an opportunity for dual enrollment. I also see in number 10, we talk about a career readiness credential. I don't know if that's necessary, like I'm not sure where that's defined or what that is exactly, but I don't know that if somebody's going for, calculus, or I guess calculus, probably something beyond calculus, at a college, you know, is that really a career readiness course, or is that a college, you know, where sort of, I guess eventually it'd be a career, but you're getting a degree, you know? Maybe you just turn into an academic, you know, so.
It's to more like the union stuff or the qualifications for like apprenticeship.
Career readiness. Yeah, I guess it just reads weird to me. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm just at the RSA. I think the intent. So we were talking about the summer piece before. Well, why we have this summer. This what feels like a weird summer policy, and it all flows back to the same RSA 306 141. So it's saying, you know, we're going to have school boards have to show that they have a certain type of instructional program, and they break out a bunch of policies you have to be in order to have that type of program. So this one relates to 7, and the way I read it, and this is 7 says a policy encouraging students to pursue and demonstrate advanced coursework, including advanced placement courses in high school and dual enrollment college courses. So I appreciate the desire to have an ongoing conversation about equity in terms of how students have access to and are supported through our most rigorous coursework. I think the RSA is intended to just say, you have, as a school district, you have to have some type of advanced coursework. That might come in several different forms. You need to be able to show that you're encouraging students to pursue advanced coursework in some form. That may be manifest via an advanced placement course, or it might be manifest via a dual enrollment course. So, anyways, I don't know that our existing practices is in opposition to the RSA. I think we can always do a better job of encouraging the maximum number of students to access advanced coursework, regardless of the way in which it is provided.
Nathan?
Yeah, I would just say, because on the bottom it says that we approved this on March 20th, 2018, and that was when the high school still had AP classes. Now we don't have any. But to piggyback on what you said, Lisa, there are, like in this part B, that's correct at the high
I
school.
agree with you.
Exactly, but
I think it's that's problematic.
not at all, because not only is there not AP courses, which is obviously highlighted, and I was like, well, maybe you just switch advanced placement wording to dual enrollment, but then I'm like, well, that's already part B. So I don't really know what the correction would be there, just other than we don't have AP courses at the high school anymore. So I don't know what we would want to do with that.
But there are students who are taking coursework that is advanced for their developmental age
Yeah.
throughout the district. So there are students who might be in a certain grade level taking a different grade level of mathematics or English or things like that.
So
So
then-
that's advanced coursework, being advanced beyond where they currently would be for their other coursework.
Okay. I guess my suggestion would just be to take away advanced placement in this part of the policy and just not have it in part A, because I don't think it's needed and we don't use it, because advanced coursework already gets to that point of what you just said. So
Lisa, then Carrie, then Les.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to get stuck here, but this just feels like a really huge issue. It's been raised over and over again by students and by parents, you know, in the high school community. And I just think we're doing a huge disservice to our community to just push this through without more deliberation. Like, I hear what you're saying, Zach, and I agree. We absolutely do offer rigorous coursework in various ways, but it's really inconsistent, at least from what I've observed and from what my student has experienced. We have lost several dual enrollment classes. We've lost AP classes that were not replaced by dual enrollment. And so we're serving people really well in CTE who want those dual enrollment certifications to go into the trades. And we are not serving, at least from what I've observed, our students who are looking for rigorous college prep to the same extent that we're serving our CTE kids. So I feel like this just merits a larger look. I'd be fine with pushing it through and removing A and revisiting that either as a separate policy or as at a later date.
Carrie?
I just wanted to clarify from what Nathan said about, so like if, for instance, I was in high school and wanted to take psychology, I could take that on VLAX. I could go to Oyster River if they'd let me in the class. You know what I mean? If they had another class, right? Isn't that what the what part of this speaks to, eligible for taking advanced coursework, blah, blah, blah. Or, I'm sorry, lines 13, 14, at a different public school or private school through distance learning. Okay. Yeah, I think where this is such a minimal change, I understand the rationale of talking about the advanced placement more, but I think this is, to me, a minor change that should move forward. And the larger programmatic offering would be a high school discussion.
Liz?
I guess, the more I kind of look over this, I think, it is deliberate that we're saying advanced placement AP, and that's really at the end of the day what AP is, and over again. And so, to Carrie, what she suggests, had said is what I was going to ask about is, is there a process in place that our students could go to a different public school or a nearby private school that has AP classes? Like, do we know where those are? I mean, I know, for example, I had a cousin that was in Newmarket, and I think they used to leave the school to go to a career technical program. So do we have any sort of mechanism in place to actually entertain this policy and get a student to an AP class at another school, if that's what we're offering in the policy?
Yeah, the mechanism is the kids pay and they register and they go. It's not the school supporting them doing it.
So I guess, maybe this is the line that we need to, pull out if that's not what we're offering. I don't know if it's something that's required under, Department of Ed policy and statute that we do this, but I guess if that's the case, then what is the mechanism that we're using?
So I don't think it's required by statute. I think it's a value judgment of the board if you wanted to go deeper. My
Yeah.
reading of the statute is it's not required by statute.
I guess, given this is first reading, this is first reading for this one,
First
right?
reading, and then really the only edits are the ones in red, so you've got line 20 to 21, and then the addition of lines 49 and 50.
I guess I would, request that the section A go back to, when you go back before the second reading, there be some clarity about whether we need to remove some sections here if we're not practically following through with lines, 12 to 14.
Want to make a motion?
Motion to amend the approval to, do you want to help me?
A yellow card? Fill out your yellow card.
To what?
Fill out your yellow card.
I know, somebody else want to fill out a yellow card? I don't know that I know what exactly I wanted to say.
What would you think about just sending it back to policy with the comments? Because I do think that the comment that this doesn't speak to advanced placement should also be addressed. I don't know that there's
I
a
think-
specific modification right now.
So would it be approval, approve on first read with, do we approve section B on first read and not section A? Can we do that?
We can do what we want, but I'm trying not to make it mucky either.
I don't
If
think
is-
it
if it's
matters.
Can we
a
just
matter of-
approve the change made? The
Yeah,
changes
it doesn't
made?
sound, it doesn't sound like she has a specific ask, so maybe it
I
is
have a
more of a
note.
general.
So I've been taking notes on things that you're talking about sending back. So I had, I kind of summarized what I thought Lisa's concern was, which concern that we don't offer AP. This is not a comprehensive approach to students to work on their own. We don't have a strategy on this going forward, and that the policy, the feeling is the policy would expect that these things are occurring and they're not occurring. And that would be something for policy committee to kind of try to weigh and think about and contemplate.
Well, and I guess really, I think the action line, and maybe somebody can correct me, maybe is line 10 to 14 is we're instructing administrators or guidance counselors to assist students in identifying alternative means of taking such classes. And this may include XYZ, but I don't know that we're instructing our admins and guidance counselors to do that. So I don't know if those lines need to be eliminated because we're not doing it, or if maybe we need to keep it and we need to add a line that says we need a program, the superintendent shall designate somebody to create, a list of available AP classes, throughout the state or what, I don't know, and some sort of mechanism to accomplish it. So I think there's a real question here. I don't want this to come back and it's the same policy, with a rewording or something of that line. I think there needs to be a real consideration about what is being done.
I think Zach has good notes on it, so I think
I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I guess
just part of the first reading is to give this kind of feedback, and we could vote against it, and we could say it needs we want to look at Section A, which would be almost the same as saying approving it and looking at Section A.
Yeah, so I guess maybe, I guess it also could be a motion to approve the policy and with a reworking of Section A. I don't know.
I think it's approve or don't approve. It's gonna come back for a second time, so you can.
Just going to say really quickly, this could be similar to when we were talking about health, and then, behind some of the policy conversation is a richer contextual understanding of what's happening on the ground. And I think in this is also, there's some conversation about what is happening on the ground. So what does a guidance counselor do when a kid comes in and says, hey, I really am interested in taking advanced physics? What are my options here? What does that conversation look like? When we, what types of opportunities internally are we talking about? If there are not internal opportunities or there are scheduling conflicts, what do guidance counselors then do? What's the next phase of the conversation? And to what extent is that a consistent practice across our guidance department, and to what extent might it look differently? And if there are other contributing factors to what guidance counselors suggest or don't suggest at the high school level, that's also something that would be informative in terms of to what extent the board wants to mandate practice and get down into get down as far into brain size.
I have a sorry.
So,
Yeah, so Zach, I appreciate all of that, and I am not trying to sit here on the board and mandate like the day-to-day practices on all of this, but I would really like for the policy and what we're actually doing to be aligned and be intentional. So I appreciate what you're saying. I think that another piece of that, we've done other policies where we've had memos come from the people who are really on the ground doing it or making the decisions. I think in this case, if it's not too burdensome to have some sort of detail of how this works for each piece of this would be really helpful. I also think the master scheduling and the block schedule continues to be a hurdle for many students who are pursuing this coursework, and that's a whole other separate can of worms. But I think just to make sure that everything that we're putting in here we believe in and we're doing, I think would be my bottom line.
I would agree that it's important to be intentional in what we're putting forward in terms of policy.
Just brief.
Last comment.
I guess I have a concern because I want to approve B like as soon as possible because I want 10th graders to be included in this. And so, I don't want to stop this coming back as soon as possible for a second read. I guess my concern is I don't want Section A to come back for a second read and we're reworking Section A completely and then we need more than a second read. So I don't know if there's any way to approve B and not approve A, because right now I'd like to vote no on A and yes on B because I want the 10th graders to be included in the handbook in however, I don't know if they're included right now or what the practical.
There's no changes to A, so if you vote no on A, that exact thing is already in policy.
Right.
So you could suspend the rules to move to put this forward as a first read. But I think what the consensus is that people want to send this back to policy for second.
I guess my concern though is do we need to approve this sooner? Section B at least because of the 10th grade students here
I think what's happening is happening
already.
At this point, handbooks,
Okay.
all those things. So I think you have time to, to do the type of dive you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's not a criticism. This is good.
Yeah.
But it's going to, between meetings and everything we're going to do, couple months for us to turn it around and have an organized conversation and get the right type of information from the ground and weigh that stuff. I don't think during that period of time you're going to have 10th graders who are, disenfranchised from this opportunity.
Okay.
Nathan, you have one last comment.
Yep. I would just say too, to adhere to student needs, I think that if a student wants to take AP Calculus and they have the opportunity to take dual enrollment calculus at the high school, that you can get college credit for and not have to take a big exam at the end, they're going to take that option. And I haven't heard at the high school when I've been here of a student wanting to go somewhere else because we aren't offering that, because not only in CTE, because I know I'm nitpicking, Elisa, I'm sorry, but like in STEM also, we have those dual enrollment classes that we're offering at the high school. And I think that in terms of student needs, like those are already adhered to. So also like with this 10th grade edit, there's already 10th graders taking dual enrollment classes. So I'm just a little confused about that too. But I'm like just adding more onto the fact that we've already been on this for half an hour, so.
20 minutes.
All right, so I think at this point, we have a motion on the floor that we should vote on. Obviously, their committee's going to talk about it. Do you think we should, our practice should be congruent with whatever our policies say? So hopefully you guys can figure that out and talk about it. So all those in favor for first reading of IHCD LEB?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
4-2.
Thank you.
I
Moving on to
Suspend the-
IJOC, and
suspend the rules to keep going on the, or, so I guess I would ask if there's any of these that we need to vote on tonight?
so
Possibly the admission of homeless students,
the answer to that is we're so far behind
all of them?
with, and the longer we put these off, what we're starting to get into are some issues where we had a grant audit in April, and one of these on the list wasn't approved in time, so we got snagged on the audit. So if
Okay.
we can
Okay.
just keep pushing,
Okay.
and I'll go as quick as I can here.
Great.
But I would love to get all of these at least through first reading.
Whatever,
So maybe at 10
suspended.
maybe at 10 o'clock, ask to suspend the rules, give us 10 more minutes if we get.
I wanted to leave. That was my goal.
All right, let's.
Someone else can
let's-
make that motion.
Let's move on to the next one.
Okay, IJOC, this is a case where the law has changed and the policy that we have on the books did not match what the law is, even though our practices match the law. So this is the model policy from the NHSBA, recommend for adoption or first reading.
Motion to approve for first reading.
Second.
Discussion?
I guess, for the record, background checks and whatnot, I mean, where are we at as far as the quickness of some of these checks and?
Same as what we discussed earlier in non-public. If you are a designated volunteer, which means you are the person who comes in every Wednesday to read in the library, you have to have a background check. If you're going on one field trip to Mr. Smith's farm with the kids, you don't need that. So we do have those done, and like I said earlier, the turnaround time's getting quicker.
Okay.
It's not instantaneous, but it's faster.
You said for the record, Liz? 'Cause you wanted-
Yeah, not verbatim, though.
Please quote her explicitly in the
sorry.
minutes.
All right, let's have a vote on first reading of IJOC. All those approve? Do you approve, Lisa? All right, unanimous. Thank you.
Homework, IKB, this is something that needed to have updates made to the legal references, so that's what was done in this policy. That was the only change. The wording stayed the same.
I don't like it, but move to approve.
Second?
Second. On
Discussion?
both those, by the way.
Actually, do we have enough people to even vote right now? No, we do.
Yeah.
Got 5.
Okay.
I think this is similar to the other comments, but there's definitely a discrepancy across elementaries and homework that comes up. It has nothing to do with this policy is so basic, but it's just like another painful, sure, let's vote this in, but the practice may be a challenge. Let's do it.
All right, let's have a vote on first reading of IKB. All those who approve? It's unanimous.
Is there any of these that we could pump to the second reading and just, we can make a motion, right, to have it
You could
be
do a
final?
block motion for the rest if you want.
Well, no, I mean, a block motion for, so these don't have to come back on our agendas again. Like, I don't think
Yeah,
we
we
need to
could
see
do that.
homework again.
Yeah, we could have, I think
Yeah,
we
I mean,
could have
I'll
done
make a
that.
motion to also approve it for second reading. Or do we have to legally post it for second?
Just, I'm curious about our own rules, board rules.
Sorry.
I think we're
We have
supposed
a
to
rule
post
sheet.
it for a
Let's
second
just
reading.
keep going with what we
Okay,
can do.
sorry.
Stay with, yeah.
All right.
In the future.
IMBA.
IMBA, distance education. So for this one, this is a new law required by policy, or new policy required by law, sorry. And because we offer VLAX classes, we need to have this on the books. So brand new.
Take a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Any questions? All right, let's have a vote on first reading of IMBA. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Unanimous. Thank you.
IMBC, this one is alternate credit options. This is been revised to reflect the model policy. Again, this is first read.
Take a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
A second?
Discussion?
We need a second.
Oh, second. I'll second.
Second. Discussion? Carrie?
I'm struggling to understand that on the agenda, it says credit for world language coursework, and then that's taken out, and then it seems to be that it covers anything.
No, you're ahead of us. This is IM.
Oh, sorry.
This is BC, not BD.
Alternative credit options.
We're-
You could see where your confusion was.
I feel like I have the same question about this one, Brian.
Lisa?
I just would love to know how we're following this. Like, I don't have any objections, but I would just be curious to know how it practically works for students. If we could bring that information before we vote on the second reading, that would be great.
All right. Let's have a vote on first reading of IMBC. All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Thank you.
Moving right along, we are now on to IMBD. To
BC?
answer Carrie's question, the title change
BC
was,
on the next one.
No, we just did that
we
one.
did BC, we're on BD.
I thought we just did, okay, I guess it's duplicated in the, packet, the same policies in the packet twice.
Yes.
So IMBD, the big change was to take out world language because there are other courses that students could take in 7th or 8th grade that are high school level, other than world language, such as math, for instance. So that's been taken out to better reflect actually the legal reference, which is granting high school credit for 7th and 8th grade coursework, not subject specific. This is first read.
Take a motion to approve.
Fish, thank
Motion
you.
to approve.
Second.
Lee,
Lee,
thank
second.
you.
Discussion? Questions? Lisa?
I feel like I'm a broken record tonight, but this is another one where I don't feel like the policy reflects what we do. And I think that those things should be aligned. We, as far as I understand, at this point in time, have Algebra 1 in 8th grade. And I believe that allows them to take Algebra 2 in the high school, but I don't believe it gives them credit on their high school transcript. We have students who take 2 years of language at the middle school, and they may or may not get exempt from 1 or 2 levels of that language at the high school, but it doesn't give them credit on their transcript. So it just feels like we're not necessarily giving them credit towards graduation.
This might be something that we have the secondary folks present on because there are some nuances to what you're saying and in the interest of time, because it's 10 o'clock, Carrie, we could discuss this for another 2 hours, but there are some nuances to what you're saying that I think they would be better served talking about.
Okay,
It is
I
10
appreciate
o'clock. Does
that.
anybody want to make a
Motion to suspend the rules to go until 10:15.
10:02.
Second.
Second, and we have to have a, do we have to have a 2/3
Do a
vote?
roll call, maybe. Yeah, I think.
Just to, we can do 2/3.
Suspend the, yeah, 2/3.
All right, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Can I just say no, just for
That's
principle, because I
over
know it's going to
2/3.
pass?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
4/5, so.
So 10 more
or
minutes.
5/6.
All right.
Go
Just
ahead.
on this one, this is a brief blast for the past for me. This is how I kind of got involved with school board in the first place. I showed up to a policy committee meeting and was told, as a public person, I couldn't comment. And this was actually what was being discussed, and there's people around the table, and there was an overall conversation about how quickly should we advance our students? Do we want a 16-year-old graduating high school because they've earned the credit in middle school and whatnot? So I think to Lisa's point, I was the one that was like, yeah, I was one of those kids that graduated early, and I think that opportunity should be available to people if they are advancing, or maybe they want to go to work. They might not have the economic means to continue to be in school. And so I think there was a conversation when I was in that meeting, I recall, about not wanting to do that, and so maybe limiting those offerings that were being available to middle school. So I do agree. I think this might be a bigger, discussion about what is available and how this might look, and do we want to advance our kids, I guess. So, thanks.
I can just say really quickly, it's a more nuanced conversation, like Patty said.
Yeah.
I would say quickly that is not at the heart of the dialogue.
Okay.
Right now, it's more about.
This was like 5 years ago.
Our
so
students,
ago.
are we vertically aligned correctly in a way in which the work that students would do at the 7th and 8th grade level properly prepares them for the next coursework that they would go into in the high school sequentially? If
Okay.
they took the high school equivalent of are they doing the same work in 7th and 8th grade that would happen at the high school in the 9th? And that's the crux of the conversation right now. And so what we don't want to do is set up students to fail the next set of coursework because they're not properly prepared. And so there's a conversation about how do we, if we're going to offer this, to Lisa's point, with intentionality as an option, then we should do that in a way where there is a real opportunity for students to have that, just the credit, but the actual knowledge and skills they need to progress to the next place. And that's a conversation that's ongoing that people are trying to figure out.
Okay, thank you.
And it speaks to that curriculum alignment piece and how important that is in the strategic plan. That's one of the things we need to work on.
All right, let's have a vote for first reading of IMBD. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, one opposed. Thank you.
Service Animals, IMGA, again, huge update to what we had before. What we updated it to is to reflect the model policy, which goes into detail about service animals, including miniature horses. And before anybody points out line 72, we can bump that out. That's a formatting fix that we can make. So
Isn't this
recommend
second
for
read?
approve for first read.
Isn't this
Isn't
second
it
read? I feel like
second? Yeah.
we've seen this already.
No, this is service animals. This is not,
Oh,
The pets.
This is- right.
Got you.
not comfort.
Right.
Or they're trained. We're our
is
pilot
service.
program.
This is a
It's technically
Cousin.
different law.
of that other policy.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a second? Lee?
Second.
Yep.
Discussion? Questions? All right, let's have a vote on first reading of IMGA. All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous? Thank you.
And the last one, JFABD, which we desperately need because this is one of the ones that snagged us on our audit. Admission of homeless students, what we had before was extremely outdated, did not align with anything that's in the McKinney-Vento Act. And everything that has been put in here now is model policy and also covers what we're required to do by McKinney-Vento. First read, recommendation to approve.
Motion to approve.
Lisa?
Lee, second.
Second.
Discussion? Questions? Liz?
Just as a, line 23, I wonder if that's maybe an or instead of an and, but I mean, I know you're pulling this from a model, so, they obviously don't need to meet all of those requirements, but.
Which one? Which ant? Or
23, line 23, instead of
Last
having
and.
an and at the end, it should be an or.
All right. Any other questions? All right, let's have a vote for first reading, JFABD. All
Hey,
those-
sorry, I do have another question.
Okay,
Who
quick.
is our homeless liaison?
Rick Matty.
Okay.
All right, let's have a vote. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
This ends the policy palooza.
Well done.
All right, Zach, you got 4 minutes.
The other stuff is you have informational on the hiring. We had some conversation just to inform the board about those hires. So I don't think there's anything to discuss. It's more public record of acknowledgement of the hiring of those folks that we were empowered to hire over the course of the summer anyways.
glad you found welding.
It's good. And we're glad to be in a position to continue
Yep.
the welding program. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, and then we have the committee updates in the report that you guys have. Future agenda items, I did create a Google sign-up sheet or spreadsheet for everybody. I shared it to everybody. Again, that was to give transparency of the ask of what people would like as agenda items or things that pop up, so everybody can see it, and then we can make comments in there and take a look at it. So hopefully that's a better form to use moving forward.
Just have one quick question about that, Brian. I like the idea of the form a lot. Is that going to be in the future included in the packet so that it's transparent which board members are asking for which agenda items?
I don't see why we can't. If anybody's opposed to it. All right, I don't see why we wouldn't add it. All right, and then I'm going to reopen public comment. It's in person only, nobody's here. Close public comment. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, thanks everybody.